YouTube just hasn't picked it up yet. Is that right?
That is correct. And Corey's just checking.
Beautiful.
Oh, okay, it's come. Just give me a minute to start recording the meeting.
There we go.
Here we go. Yep. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Northwest Community Council special meeting on August 12th. I'd like to call the meeting to order.
April 12th.
April 12th. My apologies. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'd like to call the meeting to order, and as is usual with these virtual meetings, I'd like to go through the roll and just make sure that everybody is here and their audio and video are working. So let's start with Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Here and ready as we'll ever be for this meeting tonight.
Good stuff. Thank you very much. Councillor Lovelace.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Happy to be here this evening.
Happy to have you. Councillor Blackburn.
Hi there. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to members of the public who are joining us this evening.
Absolutely. And Deputy Mayor Outfit.
Good evening, colleagues, staff, and members of the public here in Bedford Wentworth, ready to go.
Good stuff. Thank you. With that disposed of, the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of March 8th, 2021. Can I have a mover for the approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Councillor Daigle-Gammon and Councillor, I think, Blackburn.
Yes.
Are there any errors or omissions in the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor of the minutes, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Beautiful. Thank you. We have minutes. Now we are on to the approval of the order of business and approval of additions and deletions. So first off, over to the clerk.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. So we do have one item that's being added via unanimous consent of all members of Northwest Community Council, and that would be item 16.1, which is Councillor Lovelace's motion. And the title of the motion is Changes to Beaver Bank, Hammonds Plains, and Upper Sackville Land Use Bylaw.
Okay, thank you very much. Over to the committee. Are there any other changes, reorderings? Beautiful.
Good here.
Seeing none. Councillor Earth, we can't see you. Have you turned your camera off?
Yeah, I'm trying to see now. The fisheye is back. I'm sorry.
The fisheye is back. I wouldn't worry about it. It's very fetching. So we have the approval of the order of business on the table.
I'll move that, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Lovelace. Actually, it's the amended order of business. And do we have a seconder for that?
Tim.
Councillor Outfit, thank you very much. Any further comments on that? And if not, when I call your name, you may unmute your mic and begin speaking.
Yes, Mr. Chair. So we will be proceeding with Shane Bypond, who, correspondence, sorry, my apologies. Yes, we have received correspondence for this case for this month's meeting, for the April 12th meeting as well. We also received correspondence in December when this case was originally scheduled for public hearing on December 14th.
Okay. Thank you. And as a reminder to the members of public who have joined us, if you are using a telephone instead of Zoom to participate, make sure your webcast or TV broadcast is muted and that you're listening using your phone. When you hear your name announced, press *6. You'll hear an audio announcement that you're no longer muted, and wait for myself to let you know that it's your turn to speak. And once you've finished your comments and answering any questions of clarification, please hang up your phone and watch the rest of the meeting using the webcast. So at this point, I would like to hand the floor to Shane Vibond.
Good evening, members of council. I'm just going to start up the PowerPoint.
Great, thank you.
I need, apparently the host has disabled my ability to share the screen.
My apologies, Shane. I will take care of that.
That's a defense mechanism that we all enjoy.
So Shane, you should be
There
able
we
to
go.
share your screen now.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. Okay, this is a public hearing for case 19117. That is a development agreement for 525 unit mobile home park in Elmsdale. The applicant is Signet Investments Incorporated, and this mobile home park is proposed to be located on Old Truro Road in Elmsdale. Just to provide some context, Old Truro Road, or known as Old Post Road, it has two names colloquially, is located in Elmsdale, just south of Hescott Street and Richard Street, which is the subdivision directly to the northeast in Elmsdale. And the property is approximately 1,078 acres. It's vacant currently. It is actually within proximity or some distance away from the section of Old Truro Road where there's a lumber yard. I just want to make it clear, and I will in the next slide, but the proposal does not suggest that Old Truro Road will be extended to connect through. So we'll get into that in a little greater detail as we go through here, but and maybe I could show it here. So this is a concept of the proposal. It is a concept only because the actual routing street patterns will be determined at the permit stage, not through the development agreement. We'll discuss the nature of that and why it is what it is, but I just wanted to point out that the construction or proposed construction of Old Truro Road along this line is it's intended to stop here to the second access point or driveway into the proposed property. So this will not connect and not go through, and there has been some confusion or some concern about the potential for traffic to go through to that other outlet, but that is not the case. So hopefully I've clarified that. So in the policy environment, this is a mixed use designation and a mixed use zone. So in the municipal planning strategy for Musquodoboit Valley Dutch settlement, there is a policy, MPS policy MU3, which permits mobile home parks by development agreement subject to the mobile home park bylaw. Is something that we're pretty certain of. And we also looked at some other issues such as the regional plan allocation for population growth, the supports around this community. We undertook multiple engagements, and we also looked at the mobile home park bylaw and its relationship to the current a little bit further. But all of these were key components, and they took a long time to process, and here we are today. So in terms of the community engagement, there was a public information meeting that was conducted in 2014, June of that year, and in 2018, 2 community open houses, also in June. Typically, when we undertake this, there is some support for the proposal during the public information meetings, but in this case, most of the people that attended this were from that Hescott Richard subdivision, and I'll just be plain. There is a lack of support for other services outside the subdivision, such as education, fire, and police. You'll note is also that it points out that the provisions of the mobile home park is most of these elements, if you will, or end use form and function. And that purpose is a bylaw, of which the mobile home park bylaw is one. Now, when you boil it down, the licensing bylaw has the same objective as the development agreement. It's comprehensive. It has all of the elements that one needs to develop a mobile home park. It's permit-based, and unlike the development agreement, elements of it cannot be changed. So that is the clear distinction. So effectively, one cannot use a development agreement to change aspects of the mobile home park bylaw, because it would make them unenforceable. And since the mobile home park bylaw is permit-based, it cannot be changed. So therein lies the disconnect between utilizing the development agreement as a tool to implement the licensing bylaw. But I think the most important takeaway of the slide is that the elements of the MPS policy for proper form and function already appear in the mobile home park bylaw. They live in the bylaw. It's not like the DA, if there's a lack of substance in the development agreement, that those elements are being missed. It's all just being dealt with through permitting. So why I say that is because we're going back to this evaluation criteria that we spoke of earlier, in which we see that of all of the criteria, again, most of it is represented in the mobile home park bylaw, save for sub B, which is the education, fire, and police, and recreational facilities external to the site. But in terms of all of the rest of it, it is the mobile home park bylaw that must prevail, because it cannot be changed by the development agreement. So that is where the reviews will take place. That'll be done through a permit review to the satisfaction of the development officer, who will issue permits for construction permits for occupancy on these units, subject to streets, lighting, park layout and design, appropriate access, et cetera, et cetera. So what does the development agreement do? Well, in this case, what the development agreement does is it establishes or legalizes the use of land. So it says, okay, well, we can at least approve a 525 unit mobile home park on these lands, and we can establish a start and end date known as a commencement date, that in this case it's 5 years, and a completion date, which is 25 years. The other thing that it can do is it can establish an area of development on the lands by way of schedule. And this is it. So this is the area of land on the subject property, and it's essentially what we're saying is that the mobile home park bylaw can go within this area, and it can vary. Now, if that's to be changed at some point in the future, then we would have to revisit the development agreement in another planning process. But for now, this is where the development must go in its configuration as determined through the mobile home park bylaw. So on December 14th, Council passed a motion. It was to request a supplemental staff report relative to the recent correspondence about the wood turtle from Lands and Forests. And in addition to that, to ask staff to look into some elements such as traffic impact, fire, police service protection, well water impact, and availability of services out of East Hants to service the development. And so we looked at these elements. We reviewed the correspondence relative to the issue of the wood turtle. We determined through dialogue with various provincial governments within our own organization as well, that essentially the province and all of the controls the interests of the wood turtle. They are the regulators, and they have the legal responsibility for the wood turtles, and the municipality does not. What we were primarily concerned about was, given that the access, that portion of Old Truro Road is provincially owned as a crown highway, an undeveloped crown highway or provincial highway, would they continue to support using that portion of the access for the road construction, knowing that the wood turtle may be present? And they've indicated to us that their support hasn't changed, that in fact they were going to proceed to work with the developer to allow them to construct that driveway or that road into their site. The other piece was with respect to the area of development, that schedule that I just brought up, Council, for your consideration. It's attached to the development agreement, and it was that hatched area. We know that at some point further down in the process, once the province begins to look at the wood turtle habitat, and there is a requirement to satisfy permits at that level, that area of development has to be sufficient to accommodate whatever mitigation measures or protections that must occur or be made for the habitat of the wood turtle. If that area of development is insufficient and the developer is required to change that, again, as I said earlier, they would have to make application, undergo a full formal planning process in order to do that. The other issues with respect to traffic impacts, again, that was studied with primarily the Lance interchange is opening, so there wasn't a concern relative to capacity on the basis of that study. There are some upgrades, as I understand, to the highway that is just off of Old Truro Road. The developer's consultant can probably speak to that in terms of their the upgrades there. Again, all of that is under the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewals, their timeline and program. So they will do that at their based on their own business plan. In terms of police and fire protection, we've determined that it's sufficient, that there's a cooperative model in both of these areas that allows for representatives of HRM as well as local fire and police from the existing local detachment to both protect and service this area. Well water impacts, there's actually been as I said earlier, a hydrogeological assessment, level 1 and level 2. There will be another assessment on the basis of a permit requirement. So there are actually going to be 2 reviews at the municipal level, and then a third on the groundwater impacts at the provincial level. So there's actually 3 reviews that are going to go on here. But this interest is vested in the province. They have the legislative authority. They deal with groundwater and they deal with sanitary issues in Nova Scotia. And so what we do here is try to give council some confidence that there is sufficient groundwater so that they can make an informed decision. But ultimately, this all rests with the province in terms of the ultimate approval. And lastly, the East Hants services, we understood that there's sufficient capacity and that there won't be any restrictions with respect to residents that actually live in HRM but use services in East Hants. Now, like anything, that is a growing municipality, so we don't know what the future will look in terms of service availability, but for today and right now, they're saying that they're fine with this and they support the inclusion of this development. So we think that we've adequately answered that one. So in terms of the staff recommendation, based on all of the reviews, the main project, it's been 7 years of analysis, and then even in the subsequent supplementary review, we've had a really close look at all of the elements that make up this proposal. And at this point, based on that, we believe that it satisfies the intent of the municipal planning strategy, and it should be recommended. So we recommend that council approve the proposed development, which should be substantially in the same form as set out in attachment A of the staff recommendation report dated May 4th, 2020, and require the DA to be signed by the property owner within 240 days or extension thereof granted by council on request of the property owner. So I am available for questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much for that presentation, Shane. At this point, I would like to open it up to members of Community Council. If you would like to speak, please indicate that in the chat. This is just for asking questions of clarification at this point. Go ahead, Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you very much, Shane, for the fabulous presentation. Always appreciated. And just a couple of quick questions. First, regarding language, and I wonder if it's possible in this DA that we scrub clean the words mobile home park and replace it with land lease community, or is that something that's baked into the mobile or the bylaw and can't be changed until the bylaw is changed? So that's question one. Question two, regarding the mobile home park bylaw, the new one or the updated one apparently is coming this year. And I'm wondering what that will mean for this development, if this is agreed to under the old mobile home park bylaw, once the changes are rolled out later this year, what will that mean potentially for this development? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Mr. Chair. To your first point, the mobile home park bylaw is referenced because that is the piece of legislation that we're working with. So in answer to your question, I believe it has to stay. Now, so I'll just leave it at that. It should stay for those reasons. Now, in terms of the second piece, the mobile home park bylaw, the new mobile home park bylaw, when it comes into effect, council will have to make a decision about whether or not that will apply to retroactive approvals or existing developments, and going forward, whether they may even decide that that subsequent phases in a development must undergo review through the new mobile home park bylaw, but we just don't know because council has yet to make that decision.
Gotcha. Understand completely. No, that does give me some clarity, though. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I do have some questions. Oh, first, thank you very much. Well, it's really nice and clear and logically laid out, which I really appreciated. And I'm sure that members of the public that are joining us appreciate the clarity of that too, Mr. Bypot. So thank you very much. So some of my questions, it may be that they're questions for the planner. It may be that they're questions that you can answer for me. But so when we're looking at the concerns around the water table, and I understand now that if the water is in the ground, it's responsibility of the province. If it's in a pipe, then it's HRM. So the very real and present concerns that that community has around water issues right now. If I understand this correctly, can you clarify that should there be any issues into the future, should this go forward, that their recourse is with the province because it is the province's responsibility around the water table there? That's one.
Okay,
Do you want me to keep going with my questions or answer as we go along?
up to you, Councillor. I'm perfectly fine either way. I can speak to that one.
Thanks.
So certainly it would be to the province. There's no question. They have the legislative authority. Our role here is just to give council some confidence through our analysis and through the evaluation criteria that water is there to service the development. In this particular case, though, we have two municipal reviews. We have the groundwater analysis that was submitted by the development agreement, and we also have the permitting stage in which that'll be a requirement as well. So this will get a little bit higher level of review than is typical. That being said, it is the province's responsibility. We're here to give council a sense as to whether or not that can be accommodated through a technical review. We have the answer back. The answer is yes, and that is why we're recommending approval on that basis.
Thank you. My second question then is around the infrastructure and the roads. So, you know, being out there, that 90-degree turn onto the old Truro Road is a significant issue. I've been out there at different times of the day now, a few times just to have my own experience about what that might be like. And I understand that the developer is going to develop the road to a standard and then turn it over to the province.
That's correct. So there's actually two facets of that question.
Right.
The highway curve, which is what you're referring to,
Yes.
is different than the old Truro Road old post road right of way. So in answer to your question, the old post road will be built to a standard, or is proposed to be built to a standard and dedicated back to the province. And it is only proposed to be built to the second access into the proposed development or the second driveway. So it will not continue through.
Yes.
In terms of the curve,
I'm looking for. Thank you.
in terms of the curve out on the main road, my understanding is that the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure Renewal are planning some upgrades to deal with that. Now, again, I don't know what their timeline is. And so that may be something that the developer's representative can speak to.
Thank
But,
you.
but okay.
And then when you did the comparison between all of the things for a development agreement and what was in the bylaw, the one distinction was education, fire and policy and recreation facilities. And I understand that the supplementary report did address those issues. And I just lost my train of thought. Oh, okay. So it did address those issues in the supplementary report. But also in the supplementary report, in one of the attachments, did it say that East Hants right now is also going through a growth curve, and they right now do not ask whether you're a resident of East Hants or a non-resident of East Hants? Just to be clear, so if I remember that correctly from the report.
That's correct. They are going through a substantial amount of growth, as is HRM, and so they are probably looking at an issue with respect to services for all folks at some point. Right now, though, they're suggesting that it is a first come, first served basis. They don't differentiate between HRM folks and East Hants folks, so that service is available to anyone. In the future, that could change, certainly, but it could be the result anywhere, really.
Okay, and my time is almost up. So my next question of clarification, if we don't mind, is once that road, because it's a provincial road, it would then be maintained by the province for snow removal, all of those kinds of things. Is that just,
that's right.
That works?
That's right, unless there's some form of private agreement that is made with the developer. But once they dedicate it back as a provincial road, then the provincial legislation, their maintenance would schedule would be part and parcel of keeping that road clean, unless there is some type of private agreement that I'm not aware of.
Okay, And I said that was my last question. Can I beg one more?
Absolutely.
And it was just in the phrase phases as it goes along. And I think just to Councillor Blackburn's point as well, a lot of the concerns are addressed, should this go through, a lot of the concerns would be addressed through the permitting process from one phase to a next. Am I correct to understand that way?
Yes, I think the way that, I mean, it's logical that they would develop in phases, but it's the schedule in which they submit their permit requests and all of the evaluation requirements that would be needed to satisfy the permit request that would dictate how they develop and into subsequent phases. So, you know, just to go back a bit, the mobile home park bylaw is a comprehensive document. It has everything in there from recreation to street widths to lighting standards to potable water requirements and sanitary requirements, et cetera, et cetera. So it's a fully complete document. It's dated, but there is some substance to it. And HRM Engineering has some latitude with respect to what they can do to ensure that it is of a sufficient standard, a good standard. So it's not by any means a deficient bylaw, it's just an old bylaw. And it needs some updating, and there's no question. So yeah, they will be developing in phases, but the development officer and people that administer this will deal with that, and all of the appropriate levels of scrutiny will be inherent in that process.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't see any other speakers in the chat. So at this point, I would like to open the public hearing. And the first step in the public hearing is that the applicant will be able to make a presentation. The applicant has 10 minutes, and the applicant is represented by Jennifer Tsang of Sunrose Consulting. Jennifer, the floor is yours for 10 minutes.
Hello, Council. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, councilors. My name is Jennifer Song, and I'm the planning consultant for the application. One of our engineers is also on the phone in case there are some engineering questions. I've given the clerk some slides that perhaps they can rotate through as I speak, and they can begin that anytime. I want to start by saying I realize that you feel like you're in a difficult position. Many planning applications will put you in this position. Your relief comes in the knowledge that your decision is legally required to be based on the MPS policies rather than on what you hear tonight or your own personal opinion. The question before you is not, does this development belong in this location? That's not the question. The question before you is, does this development reasonably carry out the intent of the MPS? The reason for public consultation is not to ask people if they want the development in their neighborhood. The reason for public consultation is to hear residents' comments and concerns and try to address them as best as possible. This is not to be confused as a requirement to satisfy everyone's concerns, because of course that is impossible. In terms of traffic, residents said that they did not want a road connection to the Hescott Street subdivision. And at one point a connection was being considered, but the plans were changed to eliminate that connection to recognize that concern. Residents expressed concern with the intersection of Old Truro Road and Elmsdale Road. This intersection has been identified in the traffic study and in conversations with TIR that it must be improved with a curved island or other method that would provide delineation of the intersection to assist with better traffic movements. And as Shane mentioned, the province is the authoritative body on transportation for this development. We prepared our first traffic impact statement for this, for HRM actually, during our pre-application in 2013. We've been working extensively with TIR in 14, 17, 18, and 19. The biggest issue was to phase the development in line with the Lance interchange, which of course now has been in place for some time and is no longer relevant for the phasing. In terms of buffering from the adjacent neighborhood, the proposal is well over the typical minimum setback distances that are set out in the MPS and the LUB. The zoning of this property is zoned MU, mixed use. The required setbacks for the zone for as of right residential and commercial uses are 15 to 20 feet. The setbacks for as of right industrial uses, service stations, kennels, and intensive livestock operations from the residential neighbors ranges between 50 feet and 500 feet. We far exceed these setbacks at approximately 700 feet to the property line at our closest point. The linear distances from each house in the Hescott Street side to the nearest mini home range between 750 feet and 1,000 feet. The remainder of the homes are over 1,000 feet away. The tree cover consists of 70% deciduous and 30% coniferous mature trees of over 30 feet in height. This proposal is for a residential use, not an intensive livestock use. So these buffering and these setbacks is more than adequate. We took the extra work to have some engineers and surveyors prepare 3 cross sections to show the line of sight. And this was to try to give the residents some comfort in knowing what they might see from their neighborhood, which is essentially trees and possibly the tip of a roof. In terms of water, we had a senior hydrogeologist and chemist do a level 1 and level 2 groundwater assessment in accordance with HRM guidelines. The studies were reviewed by HRM and your consultant, CBCL, over the years of 2014, 15, 17, and 18. The water studies demonstrate there's enough water for about the first third of the development. Further water studies, performance assessments, and tests are required as the phases progress. This phasing approach is standard for many development agreements and meets the HRM and provincial rules. At the open house in 2018, residents were concerned with the location of a test well that was closest to the Hescott Street subdivision. And the well was actually several hundred feet away, but they asked that we not use it, and we have agreed to do that, to not use it. During this latest delay that centered around the wood turtle, we have been in discussions with the province. We have completed a study done by professional biologists on this matter, which we will be sharing with the province. As I'm sure Community Council is well aware, we've been in a housing crisis for a number of years, and which has been made worse by the pandemic, particularly in terms of affordable housing. The housing crisis is beyond desperate. This development will offer high quality homes at a starting price point of $200,000. These are not the trailers of yesteryear. These are manufactured homes that meet the National Building Code with the same finishes that you see in new homes today. People who live in these communities include seniors who live in the area and want to downsize without moving into a condo in the city, single parent households, snowbirds, empty nesters, young professionals, and young families. This development is an opportunity for HRM to be leader in the province in getting some high quality homes on the market at an affordable price point without using government funding. The province actually requires that municipalities create planning documents that carry out the intent of several provincial interest statements. One such statement is with regard to housing. It specifically states that a municipality must allow for manufactured housing in its MPS. The province states, quote, manufactured homes are merely a form or type of dwelling, typically a single unit that is fabricated off-site and then brought to the residential property for use, end quote. One reason for the province requiring this provision of manufactured housing is so that a municipality, quote, plans for and enables a full range of housing types so people can live out their full life cycle in the community, end quote. This project has a lower density than other mini home parks and typical subdivisions in HRM. We actually have an extremely low density at half a unit per hectare. The homes are located on just a portion of the site, which is in line with the province's housing statement that encourages measures, quote, which are likely to reduce the cost of development and hence make the housing more affordable, end quote. This also allows us to leave over 90% of the land in its natural state, which is better for water recharge and wildlife. We know that change can be hard for some people and that new development in their backyard can feel scary. Manufactured homes and affordability are an important part of the housing stock, our society, and our economy. The province has stepped in so that the burden of these challenging land use decisions do not rest solely on the municipality's shoulders. Your decision is not solely based on who shows up here tonight or to do what they ask. Your decision is not to decide whether the development is appropriate in this location. That decision has already been made for you. That decision was made by previous residents staff, and council who created and adopted the current MPS. Your decision is to weigh the proposal, the concerns of residents, the provincial mandate to provide for manufactured housing, and the current atrium crisis for affordable housing, all in the context of the MPS. So yes, your job is a challenging one. Thankfully, you have the MPS to guide your decisions so that you don't have to make a personal determination. This proposal addresses all the matters identified in the MPS. We have responded to the additional concerns that fall outside of the MPS, being East Hants services and the wood turtle. This proposal will meet or exceed the requirements of the mobile home park bylaw. It will have paved roads, street trees, internal parks, significant open space, walking trails, gazebos, and landscaping. It is designed to enhance the community and provide a high quality of life and a high quality affordable home ownership to all members of society. The MPS was created with input from the public who live in the plan area. The larger public needs to be able to rely on these planning documents and have a comfort level that community council will uphold them. A more thorough cross-section of people who live in a plan area get involved in the adoption and review of MPS documents than the number who come to individual public hearings. If changes are ultimately wanted to the MPS, then Atrium can undertake a review of the MPS. Sometimes councils choose to let a difficult decision like this go to the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board. Did you know that the burden at the board is on the appellant? This means that if you vote against this, the developer has to prove to the board that your decision was wrong and that the proposal does in fact carry out the MPS. If you vote for this proposal and the neighbors appeal, they have to prove that your decision was wrong and that the proposal does not carry out the MPS. It would be unfair to vote against this and thereby put yet another burden on the developer to appeal it after an already agonizing 9-year process. A development proposal can never satisfy everyone. In this case, the application has been thoroughly reviewed, public concerns have been addressed, there's a positive staff report, and the intent of the MPS and provincial interest statements are carried out. There are many Atrium residents waiting desperately for safe, affordable homeownership. So we respectfully request that Northwest Community Council please approve entering into this development agreement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jennifer, for your presentation. At this point, I would like to invite any councillors who have questions of clarification to raise them. Go ahead, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I got a little bit sidelined listening and then looking at the slides that sometimes didn't match it. So if I have questions of clarification, I apologize. It might have been just a little bit of the double whammy of the visual and the audio. Actually, one question is the units that will be there, are they purchased or are they rented? And I know that may or may not be a subject of the NPS or this, but I do know that it goes to some of the residents' concern around the stability of neighborhood.
Yes, I understand the question. The homes are purchased and owned by individuals. And what they do is they lease the land. That's why it's often referred to as a land lease community.
Yes, thank you. The second question I might have would be, and you may have heard it previously when we were talking about the work with the province to build the road up to a standard. Would that road be built to a standard prior to the development of the first phase?
Yes, in fact, the old Truro Road has to be extended. It has to be built up to the provincial standard. So it is a highway standard. I believe there's a bridge structure involved. So that road is going to have to be built with maybe the driveways coming into the property, but that would have to be turned over to the province. And perhaps we could be seeking permits for the first phase, but before, no one could certainly, building the homes or placing the homes couldn't happen until that road is built and handed over to the province, because until it's a public road, people can't drive on it to come in.
Okay, good. I think those are my two questions for clarification. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any other councillors who have any questions for clarification? Not seeing any. Thank you very much, Jennifer, for your presentation. I appreciate that. At this point, I would like to move to the speakers list for the presentation. Members of the public who have registered with the clerk's office on this matter will be given 5 minutes to address the topic. When called to speak, each speaker is asked to begin by stating your name and the community in which you reside for the record. Please keep your comments respectful, on topic, and directed to me. The first person on the list is Paul Turbot, and after Paul Turbot is Karen McKendry. Paul, are you with us this evening?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Chairperson,
As
committee
I
members, other city staff, Jennifer, and to the others of the public hearing, I truly appreciate the opportunity to address the committee and other attendees at this evening. My name is Paul Turbot, and I'm currently the president of the Nova Scotia Association of Turtle Patrollers. Our tagline is "Saving Tomorrow's Turtles Today," and that's why I'm here. I'd like to take a little time to do a short introduction for those who don't know. The Turtle Patrol was established in 2016 and has been primarily concerned about snapping turtles to date. Our mandate, however, is to support work needed for freshwater turtles as we are able. I'd like to think that we at NSATP have developed a relationship with the city that has benefited both parties. The Turtle Patrol has worked with the city over the past 4 years on issues of mutual interest. We have provided education and even a little firsthand field work with city staff. We've been able to build up this relationship through open, honest, and frank communication, which is my preferred method of discussion. So that is what you will receive this evening. Turtle Patrol and HRM first worked together on the situation at Red Bridge Pond in Dartmouth, where snapping turtle nesting habitat was going to be eliminated from inventory. Through our involvement and in consultation with the lands and forestry biologist, the situation was turned around and lady snappers continue to nest on the same beach as previously. And I can tell you that just this past fall, we had snapping turtle nests successfully hatch out at that specific site. We have unfortunately lost other nesting inventory in HRM due to road work, but that wasn't discovered until after the completion of the projects. As a direct result of that situation, we continue to provide input to the city's Red Book, which is their standard operating procedural document. In this way, we are helping tomorrow's turtles today. I'm actually surprised that we're here having this discussion, as to my knowledge, there is still legal action pending between the applicant, HRM, and Lands and Forestry. Indeed, it is due to the lawsuit that Dr. Hurlburt of Lands and Forestry, in her position as wildlife manager, is not here to speak at this meeting. It was a letter of submission that Dr. Hurlburt had submitted on behalf of Lands and Forestry in December that has led the delay from December until today. Nova Scotia's Endangered Species Act does not allow for the destruction of the habitat of the wood turtle anywhere in Nova Scotia. I know that Lands and Forestry have been made aware for several years now of the presence of wood turtles, not only in this area, but on this exact plot of land where the development has been requested. In my correspondence with them, they have confirmed to me that this permit case lies within identified federal critical habitat and defined Nova Scotia core habitat, and that activities could be contrary to the Nova Scotia Endangered Species Act. We're hopeful that Lands and Forestry will continue to enforce the designation of this site as being core wood turtle habitat and that the shovels will not be deployed. History so far for the wood turtle in HRM has suffered the same unfortunate fate as the mainland moose. Wood turtles were found in Lower Sackville in the early 80s along the Little Sackville River. None have been reported over the past several years. I have spoken with conservation officer regarding finding wood turtles where the North Kingswood neighborhood now sits, as little as 8 years ago. The Turtle Patrol has not received a single report of a wood turtle sighting in the past 5 years in that area. The turtles have been displaced. We have no turtles there today, so we have lost tomorrow's turtles forever. They're gone. Let us turn this situation around and begin by preserving an area where we know this endangered species lives in HRM, and ensuring that we have wood turtles in HRM tomorrow and for the future.
Paul, I would like to point out that you have 30 seconds left.
Okay. Developers have been pushing the bounds of what they can do with little or no punishment. Just recently, a developer destroyed a 360-year-old home in Avonport that has been recognized as a registered historic site. With 30 seconds left, we're here because the wildlife does not get a vote. They need people to step up and speak on their behalf, so I implore the committee to deny this development proposal totally. I'd like to thank everyone that's shown interest and exerted time and effort in order to bring their opinions forward in this meeting. Thank you for your time and patience.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation. Thank you. The next speaker is Karen McKendry, and the speaker after Karen is John Murphy. Karen, are you with us this evening? I don't hear Karen McKendry. Maybe we can come back to her. So the next speaker is John Murphy, and the one after John is Trevor Harvey. John, are you with us this evening? Oh, I just saw Karen McKendry's name pop up on my Zoom. Karen, are you with us this evening?
Yes, I am, just rejoining.
Wonderful, thank you very much. You have 5 minutes to present to Northwest Community Council. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I have shared a PowerPoint with councillors and staff today, so I'll just go through that now. You can follow along if you have it in front of you. And thank you very much to everyone for hearing from me today. In my PowerPoint and my comments, I'm going to go through a little bit about wood turtles, their legal protection, and how that relates to HRM decision-making, including through the MPS. So wood turtles are one of 4 species of freshwater turtle in Nova Scotia, all of which are now species at risk in Canada because of their population decline. Wood turtles are our most terrestrial turtle in that they spend a significant portion of their time out of the water in upland habitats. So wetlands, forests, and fields are part of their habitat. They're found on several specific rivers in Nova Scotia, and they also regularly go up the brooks that lead to these larger rivers. One of the main documented threats to wood turtles is residential and commercial development in their habitat. So next slide, slide 2. Wood turtles are listed under the Federal Species at Risk Act as threatened. That's the level before endangered. The act applies primarily to federal land, but it can be enforced on private land in certain circumstances. There's a national recovery strategy for wood turtles, which brings together all of the science and knowledge on the species biology, ecology, the threats to the species, and the recommended actions for recovery. The strategy also describes and maps critical habitat for the survival and recovery of the species. Slide 3. The Provincial Endangered Species Act also lists wood turtles as threatened in Nova Scotia. The act applies mostly to provincial crown land, but can be enforced on private land in certain circumstances. It adopts the federal recovery strategy as the accepted recovery document for Nova Scotia, including using the federal definition of critical habitat. Slide 4. Critical habitat, which is also called core habitat in Nova Scotia, is defined in the recovery documents for various life stages and needs and daily movements of wood turtles. So not only are the habitat elements specifically described, the location of known habitat is mapped. Those locations of observations and mapped core habitat are kept confidential from the public because revealing the locations could lead to poaching turtles, which is a known threat. However, certain people in the federal and provincial government have access to this information, and municipalities can too. What you were notified of in your letter from the Department of Lands and Forestry is that the development site includes core habitat. In that area, several of the statutes of the Endangered Species Act apply, including that no one shall kill or injure a wood turtle, and that, quote, no person shall destroy, disturb, or interfere with, or attempt to destroy, disturb, or interfere with lands proposed to be designated as core habitat. The recent staff report, HRM staff report, is erroneous in stating that the letter says the area is likely to contain habitat. It does contain core habitat, and the federal and provincial governments are aware of this. Slide 5. So what's HRM's duty in all of this? Well, the recent staff report responded to this briefly. The staff report focuses on section 1.3.1 in the HRM charter that requires that any developer or landowner comply with all municipal, provincial, and federal laws. The proposed development would destroy, disturb, and interfere with wood turtle critical or core habitat. So I believe the developer has provided evidence that they plan to break federal and provincial law. And so HRM should in fact find that under section 1.3.1 of the charter, the developer is not in compliance. There's also another HRM policy that I believe applies here. In the municipal planning strategy for Musquodoboit Valley Dutch settlement area specifically, the section on environmental concerns states, the protection of the natural environment is of the utmost importance to the residents of the plan area. It also states environmental damage is usually the result of human activity and is often irreversible. In order to protect the environment, steps must be taken to both reduce the damage being done by existing activities and to prohibit and/or control any future activities that might endanger it. It also states, in the case of existing problems, it is recognized that senior levels of government are better equipped, both technically and legislatively, to bring them under control. The municipality, however, is in a position to work with these other levels of government to ensure that new developments do not endanger the environment. I believe that these sections call on HRM to not approve projects in which there is clear objective evidence that a harm will come to an especially vulnerable part of the environment. There's no question that there are wood turtles at this site. There's no question that federal and provincial governments have deemed this species threatened and that one of the main threats is development that destroys their habitat. The development plan includes activities that will destroy wood turtle habitat. The MPS calls on staff and councillors to value protection of the natural environment, and here is a case where damage could be prohibited by a staff or council decision. So I
Karen?
implore you, yep.
Karen, if I can interrupt, you are at 5 minutes. Please come to a close.
Final sentence. I implore you to follow the direction in the MPS and all of the evidence that you've been provided with about this site and about wood turtles.
Thank you very much. And we have received your presentation. I appreciate that. Thank you. The next speaker is John Murphy, and the speaker after John is Trevor Harvey. John, are you with us? If you're connecting over the phone, you may have to press *6. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay.
Go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. Council and everyone else attending the meeting, I'd like to thank you for my opportunity to speak. I came tonight to dispel any misconceptions about the product being offered in the community, but I'm not hearing a lot of objection to the actual product. It seems like most of the objection is to development itself in any case. But what I'd like to do is open it up to questions of the quality of the product. We build a home. I'm involved in the industry now for 39 years. The manufactured housing industry has advanced so far beyond where it was when I began in the industry. The product is superior to most site-built homes today. I know that sounds a little bit arrogant, but they're built under ideal conditions. They carry 10-year manufacturer's warranties, 10-year Atlantic home warranty, I should say, covering the structure. They are not mobile homes. Some people think that they're metal roof, metal siding, metal frame windows, steel frames. I guarantee you that that's not the product that's being delivered here today. These are houses. The only difference between these and one built in a subdivision is these are built in a factory under ideal conditions. They come out of the factory as a complete home, and they're delivered to a site, and they're very affordable, and they last as long as a site-built house. So I'd just like to see if there's any questions that people would like to put out there regarding the product itself, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
This is a presentation to council. It is not as much of a back and forth between council and the public presenters.
Okay.
So if there's information that you would like to provide to council, please go ahead.
Well, no, again, like just to reiterate, I came with the intention of dispelling any misconceptions. I don't hear any, so I figured I'm here. I might as well let you know what I was here for, and if there were questions, I'd be happy to answer them. If not, I'm happy to step down and let the next speaker take over.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Murphy. I appreciate that.
Paul,
Yes.
Mr. Chair, can we ask a question of clarification?
I
to us?
don't.
I sometimes
Go
we do
ahead,
and
Councillor.
sometimes we don't.
I
Okay, just
don't see it
wondering,
in the. I don't see it in my notes that is allowed. But go ahead, Councillor.
just very quickly, you mentioned, and thank you for speaking, and to everybody who's spoken so far, you mentioned how they were built and the standards and quality and warranties and whatnot. Can you guesstimate, Mr. Murphy, in your experience, what the cost saving might be in a situation like this compared to somebody, take the land out of it. They released the land, but go in and would build one from scratch on site versus having one built off site and dropped in? Because you're one of the arguments for this is affordable, and I'm just wondering what the difference in cost might be.
The cost saving in a structure that's put into a land lease community, which is what's being proposed here. Again, it's hard to say that without speaking to the land, but when you look at a lot and a well and a septic and so forth, you're pretty well into $100,000 before you start building a house. These are put on a site on a land mounted type of foundation, so it's a structure built on top of the ground. The savings, and I say a 1,200 square foot home, which is typical, you're probably looking at 35 to 40% lower than a site built home with the criteria required to build that house on site.
Interesting. All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
Welcome. You're welcome. And I have been corrected. Yes, we as councillors can certainly ask questions of clarification. So if there are any further questions, please indicate that. And not seeing any, thank you very much, Sean, for your presentation this evening. The next speaker is Trevor Harvey. And after Trevor, we have Shannon Doan. Trevor, are you with us this evening?
Yes, good evening, Chairperson, Council, staff, and other public. It's Trevor Harvey from Beaver, Brook, Subdivision in Elmsdale, which is adjacent to the proposed development. My largest concern is, and it's been mentioned tonight on a few occasions, but is the strain on the natural resources, and mostly that being the water table. There are many homes in the adjacent subdivision here of Beaver Brook that are around 300 feet deep, and many of the residents have had to finance a second well just due to the low water volume that's currently in the water table in this area. In review of the groundwater assessment, they identified that this development would take 550,000 liters of water per day to service this development. And that's addition to water treatment that would also require more water. So when I look at the Nova Scotia Environment Groundwater Assessment, it speaks to about how there are some things that they can do to control impact of private wells. And one of the things they mentioned, among other things, is development of contingency plans. And I guess my question or concern to HRM or staff and or whichever is, what contingency plans would be or can be legally binding between a current resident and perhaps a development in the future if there was impact to our wells of that nature, or are we just left alone to kind of fight the legal battle amongst ourselves? The other thing just to make note of as a question is there was talk about that the water assessment identifies that it can serve as 125 lots. So therefore, why is the development proposal for 525 when the water survey can only provide 125? I found it interesting that Ms. Song on several times said, don't think that it does not belong here. Don't let that stray your vote. By saying that numerous times, it's just interesting that that comment was even made up, that it may not belong there. But that's all I have on time. It's just about the water. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Harvey. Are there any questions from council for Trevor Harvey? Not seeing any. Thank you very much for your presentation. The next speaker is Shannon Doan, and after Shannon Doan is Frank Doan. Shannon, are you with us?
Yes, can you guys hear me?
We can. Go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Just like to say good evening to the chair and everyone else who has joined this meeting to discuss the proposal. I live on the Old Truro Road in Elmsdale. I'm speaking tonight as a concerned resident, as I personally do not feel that this development would represent enough of a positive contribution to the community for council to approve it as it stands. To start with, the report from the Planning and Development Office states that groundwater testing shows an adequacy of water to accommodate approximately 125 mobile home units. I do not feel it would be responsible for council to approve 525 homes when there may only be adequate water for 125. Even if water availability is not an issue, the upkeep of a private water and sewage system is expensive, and if there's any malfunction, there's a very real possibility for environmental contamination, which would pollute the wetlands or run straight into the Shubenacadie River. Even brand new multi-million-dollar systems malfunction and pollute the environment, as can be seen from the problems Halifax has been having with its sewage treatment system for years now. Instances where community members have felt that their wells have gone dry or been depleted as a result of adjacent developments have been seen in other communities in Nova Scotia, such as Beaver. In that situation, calls were made to council to provide municipal water to the residents, and as reported by CBC, in a report to the council, municipal staff said it would cost $5.5 million to pipe water into the two subdivisions. Staff recommended that council require all property owners in the area to foot the bill. It seems unfortunate that local residents are left footing the bill when things go wrong or upgrades are needed because of overdevelopment or poor planning in the community. I believe the financial burden placed on the current residents in Elmsdale to carry the cost of the infrastructure upgrades would far outweigh the taxable income brought in by the development project itself. The potential costs would not necessarily end with water or sewer upgrades either, but also schools, roads, recreation, facility, fire, and other infrastructure issues. Not to mention the environmental impact of the added pollution and trash in the community. Another thing to take into consideration is that the route of the Old Crowe Road and the Shubenacadie River are historically significant areas. There's a very high potential for an archaeological site to be located there where the development is proposed. A thesis on the archaeology of the Shubenacadie River Valley indicates that a paleo shoreline went right through the area proposed for development. The Shubenacadie River historically is also a known trading route where many Mi'kmaq communities were located. A settlement called Oxbow Reservation can be seen on a map marked 1908. An environmental assessment to evaluate the archaeological findings in the area should be considered before council makes a decision on this application. One of the bigger issues about the development is the impact on our community through the environment. Under the environmental heading of the Planning and Development Office's report, council lists, and I quote, "No additional concerns were identified beyond those raised in this report." That is about as far away from the truth as you can get. This area is home to the wood turtle, which is listed as a threatened species under the Endangered Species Act. Even the planning strategy for the area states environmental damage is usually the result of human activity and is often irreversible. In order to protect the environment, steps must be taken both to reduce the damage being done by existing activities and prohibit and/or control any future activities that might endanger it. The protection of the natural environment is of the utmost importance to the residents of the plan area. The environment is attractive and, in itself, generates employment in tourist-related industries. Furthermore, the relatively unspoiled environment within the plan area is a major part of what makes this area attractive.
Okay, that's what's up
As
there.
an alternative, I would even
Forgive me,
suggest...
Shannon. Forgive me, Shannon, for
Yep.
just a second. I have
How
paused.
come?
Thank you, Frank, for muting yourself. Go ahead, Shannon.
Oh, sorry about no, not a problem. As an alternative plan, I would suggest council to potentially rezone the land to park or consider acquiring the land from the developer to make a community green space or conservation area from it. The positive economic and environmental impacts that parks have on the communities is well known. Spending on parks by the Canadian federal and provincial governments and by park visitors has a substantial impact on local economy, creating jobs, generating income for local businesses, and producing recurring tax revenue for governments. This could be a legacy project for the current council that would have long-lasting ecological and economic impacts on the community for years to come. Also, if these homes are not actually mobile homes, but real homes instead, then this actually is not a mobile home park development. How
Shannon,
does this
if I
fit
could,
within a mobile park development?
if I could
Yep,
interrupt
just a
again,
sec,
Shannon.
almost done.
Okay.
Yep. In closing, I would respectfully ask council to reject this proposal as it is currently presented, have an environmental and archaeological study done to seek further, more accurate data on the impacts of this development will have on the community and surrounding environment. And I'd just like to thank everybody very much for your time. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much, Shannon. I see that Councillor Lovelace has come up with a question for clarification. Go ahead, Councillor Lovelace.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Joan, are you still there with us? I just have a very quick question for you. Oh, perhaps we've lost her.
Councillor Lovelace, she is rejoining. Just one moment, please.
Okay, thank you. Just a very quick question.
Sure. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can. Thank you so much. I really appreciate hearing from you. You said you live on Ultra Road. I'm just wondering how long you have been in the neighborhood.
Yes. 20 years.
20 years. So in that 20 years, I'm sure you've seen Beaver Brook subdivision, expand and grow. Is that correct?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's been pretty stable for quite a long time, so it hasn't been growing a whole lot in quite a while.
And so with that subdivision, you haven't had any issues with the development and that's taken place in that subdivision. Would that be a fair statement?
Sorry, you're kind of jittery and cutting in and out. I can't quite make out what you're saying.
Sorry, I'm just trying to get a sense as to whether or not you've seen changes with the Beaver Brook subdivision over the years, and if in the last 20 years, increase of traffic on the road, if you have seen any of that. I was just looking for your insight.
Not a huge amount, no.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you very much. If there are any other councillors who are asking a question of clarification, please indicate that. Okay. Thank you very much, Shannon, for your presentation. I appreciate that. The next speaker is Frank Doan, and after Frank Doan, we have Jordan Crowe. Frank, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me adequately?
We can. Go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I live part-time in Halifax and part-time at the 77 Old Truro Road. My talk represents my opinions on this project, and as an opening statement, I can say that this project simply is too large for the available water supply and not in keeping with this rural setting. The immediate area is host to single-family dwellings on lots that range between 1 and 3 acres. This development will add at least 525 mobile homes with an average of 2.4 people per home, equaling at least 1,260 people, squeezed into a 79-acre site. That is more than the population of Bridgetown, or Pugwash, or Clark's Harbor, and this project doesn't even have sidewalks, and it only has one road in and out. The location has no public transit and very little taxi service. To my knowledge, the area has only 2 small medical clinics, hardly adequate considering the number of people that this project will be adding to the area. And now consider what should be the demise of this project, at least in its present size. And that is that the developer's groundwater study on page 1 states that, quote, this work, meaning the report, is not to provide a guarantee that future homeowners will have an adequate supply of potable water, end quote. That should be a red flag to all councillors and people even thinking about this project. A more critical review of this report shows that the groundwater supply, even with well fracking, is not a sure thing. In my opinion, this development has inadequate sustainable water supplies, requiring many drilled wells, some of which will have to be fracked in order to provide a precarious water supply. Some of the test well flow rates were as little as 5 to 10 liters per minute, which is barely 1 toilet flush from a modern low flush toilet. The average well in the adjacent subdivision is between 150 and 400 feet deep. And even at those depths, some go dry in the summer. It would seem that the developer's backup plan is potentially to, quote, directly or indirectly drain water from Black Brook. Their own report states that at the top of this property, Black Brook has a 2,400 liter per minute flow rate. and only an 840 liter per minute flow rate at the bottom of their property. The lost 1,560 liters per minute, which represents 66% of the actual flow of this brook, seeps into the ground to recharge the groundwater system and water table. I ask you, what is going to be left for the wildlife and fish when they have to start draining more water from Black Brook in order to provide more water for the subdivision? Also, the ground report states that the proposed 79-acre mobile home park will draw on the water supply of the whole 900-acre site, leaving, quote, no possibility for further development on the remaining lands, end quote. That being, of course, the other 821 acres. That statement alone speaks volumes on how fragile the water supply in this area really is. Consider that during the summer months, the sewers treatment system, which will be directly beside Beaver Brook, is likely to stink. And what happens when it malfunctions during a power failure or overflows into the adjacent Beaver Brook during a rainstorm, covering everything in its path in a toxic fecal slime and killing the fish and aquatic life? Councilors and people of the community, this mobile home development is just too large for this area at this time and will drain an unsustainable amount of water from the surrounding water table, which supplies not only this project, but the immediately adjacent established Beaver Brook subdivision. Please reject this application and or demand, at the very least, that this developer come back with a project of no more than 200 homes maximum. And that will more likely blend in and respect the ecosystem and the environment and cause less drain on the water table and the available water supply from Black Brook. Thank you for letting me speak, and if you have any questions, I will clarify what I can.
Thank you very much. I would ask any councillors who are interested in asking a question of clarification to enter that into the chat. And go ahead, Councillor Outfit.
Just very quickly to Mr. Doan, and thank you for speaking, Mr. Doan. Are wells going dry in the area a common problem right now? You mentioned, I think, that it has happened, but is it a regular problem right now with wells in the area?
Apparently, in dry summers, absolutely. In the last few months, I've spoken to people who had to have water trucked in during last summer and have even drilled new wells in order to get a second supply. And they did not frack them, which this project is planning to do, but even that, again, does not enhance the flow rate that much.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you. Councillor Outfit asked actually one of my questions just around the current state of the wells in the subdivision. And my question was going to be, have existing homeowners had to frack their wells? And for clarification, Mr. Doan, do you have a sense about how deep the current wells are for most people in that area?
Yes, most of them are. My well is 235 feet, and that's one of the more shallow wells. Many of the wells in the Beaver Brook subdivision are up to 420 feet deep, and the test wells that the developer was drilling were all 400 feet deep, and I believe it's 3 of which they fracked.
3 fracked.
And again, one of the ones they fracked had one of the lowest flow rates.
Okay. My second question for clarification, you spoke about the groundwater study, and you said that on the first page that there was no guarantee that the future homes would have sufficient water.
That's what page 1 of the developer's groundwater study says, quote, "This work is not to provide a guarantee that future homeowners will have an adequate supply of potable water," end of quote.
Okay, thank you.
It's a very long 230 or 50 pages. A lot of it is very technical, and you have to get some interpretation from people in the know.
Absolutely, I agree, Mr. Doan, and I thank you so much for your comments. They're appreciated.
It's fun reading it if you want.
my last question for you for clarification was around the so the part about 1,216 new people. When you did that math, was that for the 525 units?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Well,
and
2.4 people per home is what they suggest is likely to occupy these dwellings, and that comes out to, hopefully my math was correct, about 1,260 people.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Doan. I appreciate your comments. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Doan, for your presentation. The next speaker on the list is Jordan Crowe, and after Jordan is Francis McDonald. Jordan, are you with us?
So I'm muted, am I?
Yeah.
I would ask the clerk to mute Frank Doan, please, just to help out. And Jordan, are you with us?
Mr. Chair, it might be a technical issue. His mic is not showing up for me. So I'm going to try something and see if that helps. Just give me a moment.
Or could we reach out to him separately and ask him to connect via phone?
We can do that. So why don't we move to the next speaker?
Wonderful. Francis McDonald, are you with us?
Mr. Chair, I'm just promoting her to panelist. Just
okay, thank you. Francis McDonald, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Wonderful. Thank you, Francis. And after Francis is Shelley Johnson. Francis, go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. As you said, my name is Francis McDonald. I am the broker owner for Press Realty. I live in Rockingham, and the reason I'm on this call is because I'm the gentleman that sold this piece of property to the developer almost 10 years ago now. And at that time, the developer put a condition in the offer that allowed him to check with Halifax Planning, HRM Planning, to see if the zoning as of right was a possibility and what his process was to go through to be able to go ahead with the development agreement to do a mobile home park. And at that time, he received correspondence back from HRM that indicated as long as he satisfied the three main issues of water, sewer, and access, that he would be able to go ahead. It was zoned as of right. And if he did a development agreement and got that approval, then things would be fine. Here we are, I guess 9+ years later, and we're at this here meeting tonight talking about this particular development. So I think it's been said enough this evening that it's well aware that we're aware that this proposal is zoned as of right, and it has been recommended by city staff, development staff, and I understand some of the concerns that we've heard this evening. I believe that the water issue, for example, that was just talked about, was commented on, is been approved for the first phase, which is just a little over 100 sites. Every phase thereafter would have to be approved and further submissions made by the developer. The previous speaker on the water issue is not an expert speaking on water, but the comment about not guaranteeing the water supply, the preliminary report that was done not for the total 524 units, but for the first phase. There will be further studies done, and as was mentioned by the planners, there would be further requirements for the developer to meet all the different restrictions that are put in place. I also would like to mention that the affordable housing aspect of this particular development, the city HRM have talked about affordable housing being in the 300,000 plus range. In this particular development, you're going to be looking at homes that would be owned by the individuals that move into this park that are going to be in the $200,000 range. There would be all new homes going in there. And as a previous speaker mentioned, these homes are built to as good, if not a better quality than stick-built homes. They're built in environments that are controlled and it makes a much better product. They are not what we typically think of in the past. I, for example, know that the mobile home industry is a very strong industry in Nova Scotia. And in fact, it may surprise a lot of people, but as you know, the market in Halifax and HRM, including the area we're speaking of, is a very aggressive market. Just to give you an example, there was a mobile home that went on the market in Sackville in a park where they pay the park fee on a monthly basis. They don't own the land, they just own the mobile home. And it was on the market, a newer one that was on the market and had 19 offers on that particular property. So, you know, it's pretty obvious on that fact that people are looking for affordable housing, and this type of housing that we're speaking about is definitely in that realm of affordability. That particular area that we're speaking of, the 75 acres out of over 1,000 plus acres, is all that's going to be utilized in that piece of land. It is
Francis, if I can interrupt, you have 30 seconds left.
Okay, it is put in a location that is well hidden from the existing homes that are in the neighborhood that's next door. And in terms of that home affecting the values, or those homes rather affecting the values of the existing homes in the area, that has not been proven in any way, shape, or form in any mobile home park where we sold houses around that park. In fact, this one will enhance that community and will enhance the values of the homes in that neighborhood without question. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your presentation. Are there any questions of clarification for the members of council? Please enter that into the chat. Go ahead, Councillor Daigle-Gemin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. McDonald, thank you for your comments. I appreciate them as well. Your very last comment about that this development would not devalue homes, rather that it would enhance the value of the homes. Could you, for clarity, let me know how you would qualify that statement? And I believe you said in the beginning that you are a realtor?
Yes, that's correct. That is correct, yes. You know, what I am referring to is that in the province of Nova Scotia, and in particular here in HRM, the homes that have been, the mobile home parks that have been put in with homes next to them, those parks have not affected the value of those homes. If anything, they've all gone up in value, including the mobile homes. Those homes are not built like they might have been many, many years ago when we think about the so-called trailer park. These homes are built, as a previous speaker said, in the best of quality. In fact, better than most of the stick-built homes.
Thank you. Yes, I don't believe that the product is in question at all. My question was more about how you would qualify the devaluing or the increased value of the property. And so I appreciate your answer. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. And thank you again, Francis, for your presentation. Jordan Crowe, are you with us? You may have to press *6 on your phone to unmute.
Yes, I just unmuted. Can you?
Wonderful. We can hear you now. Go ahead. You have 5 minutes.
Perfect. Thank you. As you said, my name is Jordan Crowe. I'm one of the members of the Beaver Brook Subdivision. I feel like we're in a unique situation where we are located. We're in fact at 1 Hescott. So we're basically the corner where Old Post Road, if developed, would run adjacent to our property and then past it beyond it towards the subdivision itself. But the other thing that makes our property unique is the basically Beaver Brook itself runs right through our property, and I believe that we're the only property within our subdivision that can say that. Obviously, there's perks for us, but one of the other perks is that we get to see all the things that come through, and I can say that we have seen wood turtles, as have been previously discussed, so I won't really go into that in any great detail, but we've seen them in the property. We have beavers and lots of other wildlife as well, and that's part of the reason why we came to this subdivision, and I don't think, as has been stated, that anyone's calling into question the quality of the product that's being built or anything like that, but more the impact that that kind of community, or just the size of community, would have on the type of living and just the community that already exists kind of on both sides. But I can only really speak to my own situation. As has been discussed before, basically the density is one of the main issues. Right now, Beaver Brook Subdivision has about 80 homes in what is around 146 acres, working at about half of 0.5 homes per acre. Meanwhile, 525 units put into 79 acres would equate to about 6.6 homes per acre, or 12.3 times the property, or the density of homes per acre. Now, while the homes may be well constructed, that certainly changes the lifestyle and just the feel of basically the communities that exist already. So that goes on one point. But with that number of people coming into the community, as been discussed in some of the supplemental documents that have been submitted, yes, East Hants recreational facilities are not judging whether people are from HRM or from East Hants and whatnot, but they also call detail to basically state that there are many overburdened recreational facilities and classes, things like that already in place. So first come, first served basis, that's great. I suppose that no one's going to be isolated in that way, but that still will not won't relieve the issue that exists where people right now, even as it stands currently, are not available to get all those resources that they want. It was stated earlier by Jennifer for Sunrose that these communities are looking largely for people, new parents, elderly, and things like that. Now, new parents, I have 4 children myself. I can certainly say that parents of young children, those recreational losses are going to be felt. And as was spoken to earlier as well, the elderly with medical and things like that in the area, they're already overburdened. And another addition of more than 1,000 residents based on an average size, that would certainly burden the East Hants resources even more than they are already burdened. One other thing that I would call in just out of question, I guess, and maybe this could be clarified as well, the maps that have been referenced for most things, if I am reading the dates on them correctly, are for December 5th, 2013. And I know it's been stated a few times that the road will not continue onwards to bridge to subdivisions, but earlier the municipal or the HRM page basically had a map that was also done by Mac Williams Engineering Limited and dated May 2014, so 5 months after the map that exists, that is shown and attached on the website now, that shows a phase 6 development out of the 10 phases that does attach the 2. I guess, would seek clarification on whether that actually is the case, since that map is a more recent map than the one that is been submitted and shows differing information. As the person who basically lives right next to the road that will soon to potentially have 525 houses more people going down it, to be honest and frank, it's not comforting to hear that only one access point will be there instead of 2. That basically traffic. Yes, there are landscape changes put into effect. And,
Jordan, if I can interrupt for a second, you have 30 seconds left.
Thank you. There's development going on there as well, but it's also 3,700 added dwellings in the local area as well. So while construction is growing and the roads are developing, I feel like this is outpacing that development, and the issues that are already there are definitely going to be exacerbated by this. So I won't add to the points created or mentioned earlier by other speakers, but I feel like there's more than enough points that would convince council, and I urge council to deny or decline this request, because there's would support that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Jordan. Are there any questions of clarification from council? And I would remind everybody who is attending the meeting this evening over Zoom that the chat is for members of council alone and for HRM staff who is assisting us, and would remind members of the public not to use the chat in Zoom. So again, are there any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Lots of questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you. Mr. Crowe, thank you for presenting. I really appreciate it. When you spoke at the very end about the road not to go to, were you saying the extension to the Old Post Road? When you say phase 6, can you tell me the dates of that you were looking for? And I guess you were looking for clarification on where that second road would be. Was that what your question was?
Really clarification. More just, it's been by the very beginning of it.
Mr.
Jordan,
Chair,
we are having a difficult time hearing you. Jordan, if you're there, we're having a difficult time hearing you.
Can you hear me?
Your question at the very end, Mr. Crowe, was about phase 6 or not, and I didn't get all of it just because the sound wasn't very good, and I was wondering if you could just restate that for me for clarification.
I'm sorry, I'm not hearing the audio very well either, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Okay.
Okay.
Perhaps, Mr. Clerk, is there a way that offline we could get that answer from Jason in a way that we could hear it? Is that possible?
I am not 100% sure. I can ask our clerk's office staff to reach out to Jordan, but he's on the phone. So that's how we would reach him.
Yes.
So it might not be possible.
I just want to make sure that his question is heard.
Well, we can ask Shane Bypont, the planner in the meeting, if he heard that question, and then perhaps Shane can respond to that after the public hearing closes.
Liz, thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you. I'm sorry, Jordan, but at this point we are going to have to move on to the next speaker. And the next speaker is Shelley Johnson, and after Shelley Johnson is Valerie Piori. Shelley, are you with us? I see you there. Okay.
Yes, good evening.
You have 5 minutes, go ahead.
Great. We do have a short presentation with, so a good evening, Mr. Chair, City Councilors and Department Heads. We thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and your constituents on the manufactured housing industry and what our members are offering to the residential marketplace. We have a brief presentation that consists of photos and a video of our member developer who's on the line, and who has developed another community named Foxwood Village. So if you just click on the play button at the lower, you might have to enlarge the video.
Just one moment, Shelley. I'm just going to stop sharing just to make sure that my audio is actually going to share when I share. Just one moment, please.
Sure. Thank you.
I heard about Foxwood Village through my partner, Andrew. His co-workers lived around the area here, and we heard that it was building customized homes at a very affordable price, and that's what attracted us here.
I decided to purchase in Foxwood Village because I was looking to downsize from a 3-story townhouse to single-level living, and this was great value for the money.
We really wanted something new. We've never had a brand new home. We wanted something one level We wanted a westerly view.
I work in Halifax, and the minute I hit the 103 and head to home, my shoulders drop, I start to relax, and I feel like that's what this community is all about.
It's a very safe community. It's out of the hustle and bustle of the city. It's pet friendly.
Literally being 3 minutes from Tantall and 10 minutes from Bears Lake. It's just, you still feel that you're in the country in a lot of ways, but you're so close to everything.
And being able to build a house to our own specifications. As you can see, it's very all custom design, and it's very impressive when we have friends and family over. We're looking for that wow factor.
We have a
I am going to interrupt for a second. We have had another person.
we have a big family.
Andrea, if you would mind pausing the, thank you. We have had another member of public put a comment into the chat. The chat is reserved for councillors and members of HRM staff alone. If you do put another comment into the chat, we will have no option but to remove you from the meeting. Thank you very much. Andrea, can you please proceed with the video?
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
And Shelley, do you know which timestamp it was on? Because when I paused it, it resets.
Yeah, it's okay. I think we can. I think I think the video, what you did see of the video shows the members that actually built the community, and these are residents that live in that community. So,
because I hate to say it, because we lost some time to the resetting of the video and various other things, I'm going to have to give you 2 minutes.
Yes. Okay. So that's why I'll just continue.
Thank you.
So our developers, they invest millions of dollars into their communities. They provide their own water sewage plants for their communities where municipality services doesn't exist. They follow all of the environmental requirements set out by all levels of government agencies. They're investing in their infrastructures and creating communities where you know your neighbors and you are looking out for each other. They also conserve any environmental habitats, such as for the wooded turtle. So they would, in their planning processes, they would design outdoor spaces for the residents in that area. Our developers are making homeownership not just a dream, but a reality. And financing qualifications to live in a land lease community must have a higher credit score than a traditional mortgage. Criminal checks are also conducted on the residents who wish to live in land lease communities. So we encourage you to support this development and understand that this development will be in stages. So the 525 units will progress over time. It's not that 525 units will be installed tomorrow. So we are developing affordable housing, which is the mandate of all levels of government. So let's not delay this development any longer. And it is our wish that we update the terminology and the bylaws of today's standards so that we can pave the way for the future of residential construction. And the association is also available for consultations to assist in this undertaking, as we know that bylaws haven't been updated since the 1980s. And thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you very much. And I apologize for all of the interruptions on behalf of the staff and everybody else in the meeting. Are there any questions of clarification from members of council? Please indicate that in the chat. Okay, thank you very much. At this point, it is 5 to 9. Can I, from members of council, can I please have a motion to extend the public hearing and the meeting past 9 o'clock?
Motion to extend, Mr. Chair.
I think that was Councillor Lovelace who moved it. Councillor Outhet seconded it. All in favor of extending the meeting past 9 o'clock, signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. Great, thank you very much. I didn't see any questions of clarification for Shelley Johnson, so the next speaker is Valerie Piori, and the speaker after Valerie is Arnaldo Piori. Valerie, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful. Go ahead, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. I have been living in this subdivision, Beaver Brook, for 20 years, and I live on Richard Street. Initially, when Shane Vipon spoke, he said that there had been some confusion around the road, meaning Old Trora Road, and access to the new development. And he sure is correct, because even with his attempt to clarify, I'm still not 100% sure that I understand. But I'm going to go with what I think is what's going to happen, which is when you come into Old Trora Road off of Elmsdale Road, you are going to be on Old Trora Road, and then that road at the very end is going to extend. That's what my thought process is and what I think is going to happen. And if that's the case, the subject of the traffic and how that is going to impact the present subdivision and those who are on Old Trora Road certainly will be increased with the initial 125/30, because sometimes in the reporting, I noticed that it's not only 125, it's at one point it states 130. So what I'm thinking is that it is great that Shane noted that there would be some improvements to the development of the intersection at Old Trora Road. And what that means is, what I could get from it is that it's going to be a concrete kind of development so that it can be separated for cars going back and forth, and there's going to be painted signage on the road itself. But what it's not indicating is that there is a significant period where there is the rest once you enter the rest of the road, which doesn't have any sidewalks nor any sufficient room for the 125 residents, which would equate to, I don't know, 250 people that will be added. And so added to the population of people walking and driving, but specifically walking for pedestrians. And that's one of the issues that was indicated in the report, was that MPS said that it is a direction that the developer actually has enough safety for the pedestrians. Well, right now, they're kind of putting the onus on the provincial government, if I'm not mistaken, for them to make sure that that is going to happen. But I'm confused even with that, so I don't understand if that's going to even happen. So that's a concern that I think is something that we should all think about. The one high thing that I'm hearing throughout is the water issue. And my question to the councillors is, everybody is saying that the confidence has to be placed to you as councillors to provide a reasoned decision. So I'm asking you as councillors, do you believe that we as residents here in the Beaver Brook subdivision and on the Old Trora Road, can we seriously have 100% confidence that if there is not enough water shortage, if there's not enough water supply, are you willing to give us something in writing that states that we're not going to have to pay the cost of that? I really doubt it very much if we're ever going to get that from you as councillors. So think about that when you are making your decision, that if we as residents can't have something that is going to confirm or reassure us, how can we really be realistic about saying that we approve of this development based on that? I also have the issue with the fact of all of the fire services, the the police services. In the attachment B excerpt from the MPS strategy for the Muscatine Valley Dutch settlement, it was noted that the education, emergency, fire, and police services, and restoration. Yes, yes.
I'm just going to interrupt for a second. You have 30 seconds left.
Okay, so one of the staff, in the staff memo, their response was, it's noted that police were circulated but did not respond. However, the town of Elmsdale, where police services are located, is within 2.5 kilometers for the site. HRM Fire will service the site. Based on what documentation? I didn't see anything that supported that. So anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Valerie. I appreciate the presentation and the comments. I'm opening the floor to any members of council. If you are interested in asking any questions of clarification, please indicate that in the chat. And I don't see any questions from council. So thank you very much again, Valerie. The next speaker is Arnaldo. The next speaker is Arnaldo Piori, and the speaker after Arnaldo is Gary Mead. Arnaldo, are you with us? You may have to press *6 on your phone to unmute. And you're still muted. You may have to press *6 again. I saw you unmute for a second. There we go. Can you hear us now?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
There we go. We can hear you now as well. Go ahead, sir. You have 5 minutes.
Okay. First of all, thank you very much for including me as a speaker tonight. As it relates to this subdivision, I'm opposed to it for a number of reasons, and a lot of the previous speakers have touched on them, and they include water, infrastructure in the way of the impact on policing, fire, and waste management, traffic volumes, access points, and of course, property values. Now, a lot of the previous speakers and some information has been provided since I made my original submission back in December. So I'd like to speak to 2 items, one being the water and the other being the access point. And like some of the other speakers, I'm still not clear on some of the points. I'll address water first and then go to the other one, and hopefully you can address them after I'm finished. As it concerns the water, I've heard that the initial well that was going to be built or developed is not, so that lessens the impact on us in our subdivision. But I also heard that the plans are that what they plan in the immediate future will only address 125 of the residents or resident sites. And that would leave the balance of that plus future expansions to be dealt with. My real concern is, how is that going to be addressed by the developer? Or has that been put forward? Because I really haven't heard anything addressing that issue. So I'm still quite worried about down the road what that means to us as residents here. And as some of the previous speakers have indicated, the cost that could come from the impacts of that, where currently some people are drilling second wells just to get water right now. So if somebody could at least explain to me how that part of it will be addressed in the future. The second part was, and this gets to the access to the development that was supposed to be through our subdivision. When I say our subdivision, we access our subdivision on this side of the old Crowe Road, and that road ends, of course, where Hitchcock Street is. So I assumed that was going to be extended, but then I heard that that is now taken off the table. Can somebody clarify for me whether or not this has officially been taken off the table? And if so, are there any plans to reinstate that at some point in the future? So those are the basic points that I'd like to hear some comments from the council or people who know about this stuff.
Okay, thank you very much, Arnaldo. This is a presentation to the council. It is meant for you to provide information to us. If that information does come out that you are wondering about, it would come out through the course of the dialogue, but this is not a back and forth or a venue where you would be able to ask questions of council or staff and receive the type of response that some people might like. So at this point, are there any questions of clarification from members of council for Arnaldo Piori? I don't see any in the chat. So thank you very much, Arnaldo. We do appreciate your presentation and you're bringing your concerns to the table. The next presenter on the list is Gary Mead, and after Gary Mead is Karen Rudman. Gary, are you with us?
Hello?
Gary, we can hear you now.
Okay.
Thank you. Gary, you have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
My name is Gary Mead. I live actually in Foxwood Village in Hooley, and I worked with the County of Halifax for 28 years, and I was a councillor for 16 years. And basically, I'm talking about the houses actually that I live in right here. Okay. Last fall there, we sold our 5-bedroom house, 3 stories in the head of the bay. And now I'm a senior. I don't want to walk stairs anymore. So basically, my wife, actually, she's 72 years old today, but I don't tell anybody. But anyway, it's a flat. Oh, everything's on one level. That's the basic thing that I like to point out. And it's actually this development is built by Jim Andrew there, and they've been really professional in their building of the. Well, there'll be 57 houses down here, okay, in Hooley, and the most important thing is the cost. Won't cost HRM hardly anything to build because they'll be putting the roads in themselves because they got all the machinery down here right now. And it's basically the affordable housing in the county because it's all on one level. And when the development is complete, you're looking at it probably $12 to $15 million for HRM and the taxes. The other thing is that that when the development finishes up there in Elmsdale there, it's the surrounding areas like the gas stations, the stores, they won't benefit from the number of people that go there, but they're not going to be, the houses aren't going to be built there probably for another year because there's a backup of all these affordable homes being built because there's so many, all the seniors are trying to get one. Like took us about 6 months before we moved into ours about a month ago. Yeah, like I say, there's a desperate need for housing, affordable housing in HRM. And these homes are beautiful and provide opportunity for home ownership, a return on investment in the event of the future sale of the homes, not just a room or unit in the building. The mini home park meets the intent of the municipal planning strategy in HRM The mini home park is well buffered and separated from the surrounding residents. We are in a housing crisis and HRM needs to start supplying housing. The councils need to do the right thing and uphold the MPS and the views of, well, not the residents, what I hear tonight, but most of them are something about water. But anyway, I was the first house in Tantallon Woods, and the lots up there were 15,000 square feet. And each one had a well. They didn't go dry. They had a well on a third of an acre. I sat through quite a few of these developments agreement meetings, and there's one down about 15 years ago down here in Canadian Tire wanted to start something down here, and they thought the councillor could stop the Canadian Tire from coming in. All the residents got together up to, well, it's about 300 got together up to St. Margaret's Arena. Probably 75 to 80% were against it because they thought it would put the people out of business. It was the opposite. They were an anchor store, and they brought in businesses to the community, not what the people thought. And also hopefully this will go forward up there, and you'll see probably a lot of seniors up in that area going to.
Gary,
yes.
Gary, I'm going to interrupt for a second. You have 30 seconds left.
No problem. And a lot of people up that area that are senior citizens will probably go to this park. All right. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you very much for your presentation, and please wish your wife a happy 72nd birthday from all of us.
I'll do that.
And I would ask any councillors if they have any questions of clarification.
Mr. Chair, I'm just going to say hi to Gary. I sat next to him my first 6 months on council 13 years ago, and I don't think I've heard from him since. Maybe I scared him away, but just sending Gary my best wishes.
Thank you very much.
Okay. And thank you. I don't see any other questions of clarification, so thank you very much, Gary, again for your presentation.
You're welcome.
The next speaker on the list and the final speaker on the list is Karen Rudman. Karen, are you with us?
Yes, I am.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Go ahead. You've got 5 minutes.
Okay. I want to thank you for allowing me to have a chance to speak. I want to touch as well on the water. The water table is terrible. I can appreciate the reviews and studies that are done, but speaking from personal experience, I can tell you that I don't need a study to be done. The water table is terrible, and we've run out of water on multiple occasions just about every summer that we've been here for the last 10 years. So that's that on the water. Our water is also, you need to have, there's sulfates in our water, so every home will have to have a water softening system and filtration thing put in. I'd like to also address the schools. Dutch Settlement Elementary School is a very small school, so any influx of children going into that school will just result in a new school needing to be built, which will then result in higher taxes. Going back to the water, I did miss one little point here, that if the water table does dry up, I would like to know who is responsible for those municipal pipes, the homeowner, or is it the province? Because then the homeowner will have that bill as well as have a water bill to pay for that we don't have now because we have our wells. Also concerned about the displacement of wildlife, the wooded turtle, from deers, eagles, bears, rabbits, foxes. I've seen it all come up through my backyard. My backyard is actually, would be going right to the new development. I back onto that. I love the wildlife. I love seeing it. That's one of the reasons why we bought our home here, was because we were on a green belt. It's very disheartening to think that all of those animals will then be displaced. To talk about affordable housing, it's great that the cost is low and everything, but there really is no public transit and there's no doctors here. I have to travel 50 kilometers to the city to see a doctor. And I personally know people that have lived here for the last 30 years that still don't have a family doctor in the community and have to travel to the city. So I don't see how this could help any elderly person or single parent families that would have to then travel that far to just have medical treatments. So that's kind of a point of a downfall as well, I guess. But my husband would also like to speak because he's here as well. So I'd like.
I don't know how much time we got left. Yeah, I was just taking some notes as we were going through. But speaking as a resident, yeah, I didn't move here to gain, or I moved here to gain privacy and space. So certainly the sacrifice and wear and tear on vehicles and gas money to essentially revisit the atmosphere of the city isn't something that Karen or I are interested in. If the intent of the development is to accommodate lower income families or residents, what is the vision for the role of these residents in the community? If the residents for the proposed development are on a reduced salary, why isn't the development occurring closer to the city where there's transit access and lower cost for fuel to access job opportunities within the city? Frank nailed it with the details on the water. Karen did as well. I can reaffirm that in the summertime, regardless of how much rain we have or not, I can run my outdoor hose for a maximum of 30 minutes before my well goes dry. So I wanted to reiterate that. I've often heard about development criteria, one of which is, does it fit? The notion that this trailer park of its dimensions fits in beside a subdivision of 1.5 acre lots is remote, let alone the largest trailer park proposal in the province. In response to the comment about demand for trailers, all homes have, with their values, have demand and have increased in the last year. Interest in homes is universal, regarding regardless of the description or details of the home. In conclusion, it's not that we're opposed to developments or any of these styles of trailers. They look quite nice. I'm just opposed to the size and obvious obstruction to the water supply that this development clearly presents. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much for the presentation. I'm going to ask members of council if they have any questions of clarification. Go ahead, Councillor Outfit.
Thank you, Chair. For Karen, or was it Ken, maybe her husband? You mentioned that you can't run your hose very long, your well goes dry, you've had well problems every summer for the last 10 years. Where exactly are you in the community, and do your neighbors have these same challenges, or is this something unique to your well? Is this something that you just haven't gone down hundreds more feet or whatever that's required or done a second, or is this something you and your immediate neighbors are also experiencing? I'm very curious about this.
Well, our well is drilled 200 feet or more down. I'm not sure if our neighbors have experienced that on either side of us or not. I haven't spoken to them about it. I just know my own personal experience with our water here and my family.
Okay, I'm just trying to establish if it's an anomaly or a significant problem. That's why I ask. Thank you.
Our location is 29 Hescott, so that's on top of the hill. I don't know if that makes our situation any more different than anyone else's. I can't see how it would, but no, there certainly is major water issues. We have a pool. Absolutely no way I can entertain topping up my pool with a hose. It must be trucked in by a water truck.
Okay. Thanks for your answers. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any other further questions of clarification? I don't see any further questions of clarification. So at this point, I would like to ask the applicant if they would like to take 5 minutes and address council and respond to any of the points that any of the public speakers have made. Jennifer, I see you lit up, but I don't hear you.
Oh, hi. I got disconnected and then I just tried to reconnect. Is it my turn to try to answer some of these things?
It is. You have 5 minutes. Go ahead.
Thank you. Okay, I'll do my best here. I'll start with the water. Now, our water engineer is not with us. We do have another engineer, but it's been explained to me that the water table underground isn't just a big lake. It actually runs in kind of like river, kind of underground river kind of situation. So when you drill a well, it's almost like hit or miss. You can drill and hit the water and get a ton of water, or you could be 1 meter away and drill and perhaps not get much water. So the studies, the hydrogeological studies that were done have demonstrated that there is plenty of water in the water table. And we had to drill a number of test wells, and some will have higher volumes than others because of where they're located. Now, this again is a provincial issue, and it is normal procedure to prove a certain amount of water based on the drilling that you do. You typically wouldn't try to do it for the entire development. That's why that sentence was in the study that said it is not guaranteeing full water. And so what happens is, and this, just to give you another idea, of the Oakfield subdivision, which was a development agreement, followed the similar procedure where you prove enough water for a certain phase, you develop that, and what that gives you is that gives you some existing wells to then further test. And as you move forward, we have to do volume tests and a number of other things. But the other thing that can happen in the very beginning is that sometimes a baseline survey is done of wells in the neighborhood. So for example, perhaps, I know in Oakfield they did this, if a neighboring resident agrees, we can go in and test their water and test the volume, and then we know as a baseline. So if someone's having trouble with their water volumes now, then that's not caused by this development, obviously, because it's happening now. But we could do a baseline. So if something changes, then there can be some, I believe some discussions can take place about rectifying situations. That's all I can offer you, but I know that the province has more answers, and there's a whole procedure for all of this. This isn't the first time this has come up. These questions are raised all the time, and there's procedures to deal with it. With regard to someone mentioning a green belt, this is not a green belt, and it is unfortunate. Sometimes people buy into a location and don't realize that the lands around them are privately held and they're zoned for development. And I would just point out that much of this plan area is zoned MU, which is a mixed use zone, which allows quite a range of residential, commercial, industrial, service stations, kennels, intensive livestock operations. These are all permitted as of right. So, not trying to scare anyone, just saying that it is zoned for development. It's not a green belt. Let's see. The other issue, of course, was the wood turtle. We've been talking with the province. Our information from the province is that this land is not designated nor mapped for protection. We have a letter that clearly states it is allowed to be developed. They want to work with us to protect the turtle, which we're certainly willing to do. We've had a study done by professional biologists, and we'll be working with them. We have to, by law. Every person has to work to protect wildlife if they are seen on your land with the province and the federal government. So we'll be doing that. What else? I think I got most of them. I think there was some confusion about the density, and I think I may have also misquoted that, but it's 525 units over 1,000 acres. So do the math, it's half a unit per acre. So it is considered to be very low density. Did I get that right or wrong? So
you got that the other way around. It's 2 units per acre. Sorry, 2 acres per unit.
Yeah. So anyway, someone had mentioned something about 6 or 8 or higher per acre, and that's not the case. But anyway, regardless, it is lower than your conservation design densities, and because we're preserving so much of the land as open space. So am I at my 5 minutes? We do have Steve Williams. He's our engineer if you have further questions.
You have 25 seconds.
Okay. I don't think I got to the traffic, but we are improving the road. It's TIR standards. We're going to turn it over to them. You can rest assured the province will ask for a very high level road construction.
Okay. Thank you very much. I'm going to ask Council, go ahead, Councillor Daigle-Gammon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I think we need to close the public hearing, Mr. Chair.
I was not sure if Councillor Daigle-Gammon was going to ask a question of clarification or not.
I'm sorry.
I suspect she was, but
I was, Mr. Chair.
you were. Okay.
And it was just, and I wasn't sure if I was allowed to, but thank you. And
excuse me, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. I think most of the time to ask questions of clarification of the applicant or after they give their initial 10-minute presentation.
Okay.
But I will leave it up to the discretion of the chair if he wants to allow one additional question.
Go ahead, Councillor Daigle-Gammon. Thank you very much, Andrea. I appreciate
very much, Mr. Chair. It was just for clarification when we were talking about the density and saying that it was over 1,000 acres, but the location of the development is within 79 acres, not 1,000. I just wanted to make a clarifying question on that.
I believe you are correct, and that's more of a statement than a question. So thank you very much.
Jennifer had just said that the density was per 1,000 acres, and I guess the clarity is it per 1,000 acres or just the 79 acres that the development is on?
Okay, yeah, so the overall density is across the full 1,000 because that is, the rest of that land is preserved and not being allowed to develop. So when you calculate density, it's overall. But if you're going to speak about intensity, like the intensity, it's all focused in one smaller portion of the lot. And so yes, the intensity, we don't usually calculate that number per se, but I understand that's what you're talking about. In that location, it's more intense as opposed to the 500 being spread out across the full 1,000 acres. Yes.
Thank you very much for that clarity. I appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you very much, everyone. Can I have a motion to close the public hearing, please?
So moved, Tim.
Councillor Outfit, thank you very much. A seconder, please. Councillor Blackburn, thank you. All in favor of closing the public hearing, please signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
All opposed, say nay. Great, thank you. The public hearing is now closed. So what are, at this point, I would like to provide staff with an opportunity to address any comments from the public.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There are a number of clarifications, issues that I'd like to raise with respect to the comments from the public. First thing is with reference to phase 6. We noticed that came out as one iteration, a map that was made back in 2014. In fact, many scenarios and many maps were made over the course of the 7 years. And phase 6 only referred to the extension of Old Truro Road to fully extend that road. In fact, there's no real reference to phase 6 in terms of the plan per se, and particularly now as the overall plan of the mobile home park is subject to the permit-based system. That phasing and the number of phases will occur then. So I think it's important to note, and I think this will clarify some questions from a number of people. Old Truro Road is not meant to be extended. It will terminate. It'll be upgraded to a point, and it'll terminate at the second driveway into the proposed development. Should this be approved, I want to make that clear. In terms of the potable water issue, yes, the analysis is undertaken for groundwater. It's reviewed through our third-party reviewer, experts in the field of groundwater analysis. And that's an iterative process that occurs between us, the developer, and our third-party reviewer to ensure that everything can be agreed upon in all parties. And only then would they satisfy that requirement. That's only for a portion of this development. Any additional units in the future would have to undergo additional analysis, and that would be done at the permit stage. But that's only one piece of this. When it goes to the province, this will ultimately have to be determined to be a public water supply under the provincial system, which is a higher level of scrutiny. So there is a chance that if they can't meet the groundwater requirement under that higher level of scrutiny, then they won't get the permit for the water withdrawal. And if that's the case, then they cannot proceed. So I think there needs to be some understanding and a distinction between the municipal role that provides council with some confidence that there is potable water based on study, but that the issuance of permits and the higher level, more technically advanced scrutiny will occur at the provincial level. And yes, if there is, after all of the permits have been issued, some problem or deficit with groundwater, then that is certainly an issue that the province must address. They have the legislative authority, the municipality does not. And I want to clarify, there will be no municipal pipes here. There's no extension of sanitary service or water service to these lands through municipal pipes. This is on-site development only. Okay, in terms of the fire and police issue, the service of those two agencies to this site, there's a local fire detachment, an HRM fire detachment that is a volunteer service. And then there is the East Hants detachment fire service that is located in Elmsdale. They have an understanding, a cooperation agreement that they form that would that essentially would suggest that both of those agencies would actually go to a fire emergency, both attend the fire emergency, and they would coordinate amongst themselves to ensure that that service is optimal for that particular development. So they've got a very good system in place. It actually mirrors the police service with respect to their detachment and how they handle it, because they do exactly the same thing. So I'm sure they've all coordinated on their systemic approaches. Now they're currently under review in terms of their budget and their system, and they're making tweaks, but they assure us on both levels that both fire and police will adequately service this site and that there are no issues. And I just want to remind council that the 525 units is over a period of 25 years. So this is not something that's going to come on stream in the next year if council chooses to approve this. It is a staged approach where, and I'll have to agree with Jennifer Song on how she broached it, but she essentially said that additional study would occur on the basis of the last completed phase. And that would all have to be done in coordination with HRM planning and development in terms of the permitting process, and also with the province. So this is something that's occurred. So the commencement date, again, I suggested it's 5 years. So they have 5 years to begin, and they have 25 years to complete. So this is a long range project. And I think those are the two or the three main issues. I think I'll leave it there, and I'm certainly available if someone has any questions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. So at this point, what are the wishes of council? Councillor Daigle-Gammon, would you be interested in making the motion?
I suppose, yes. To get us moving, yes. I move that the Northwest Community Council, 1, approve the proposed development agreement, which shall be substantially of the same form as set out in attachment A of the supplemental staff report dated February 22nd, 2021. And 2, require the development agreement to be signed by the property owner within 240 days or any extension thereof granted by council on request of the property owner from the date of the final approval by council and on other bodies as necessary, including applicable appeal periods, whichever is later. Otherwise, this approval will be void and obligations arising hereunder shall be at an end. I so move.
Thank you. Can I have a second? Seconder by Councillor Blackburn. Okay. Thank you. So at this point, councillors, if you would like to indicate that you would like to speak, well, please indicate that in the chat. And I apologize for the clumsiness of that sentence. It's 9:30. Go ahead, Councillor Daigle-Gammon, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. This is such a difficult decision. One of the speakers sort of said the product is not a concern, I don't believe at all. The issues really, and I would say that in terms of affordable housing, yes, all of the positives about affordable housing are fully present, that it's really good that way. We do need, the housing market needs affordable housing. I'm a full proponent of it. It seems that the developer has made all of their requirements in terms of the water, the access road, and being amenable to building out the standard road. So that does make, really good sense. And so those are the positives that are within this agreement. They're saying that the traffic support study supports that there's no concerns because the interchange there is almost finished. So there are a lot of positives. The fact that it is really just now 125 for the water table, and then the rest, any future development, is by permit. And so the responsibility resides really at the province with permitting, so that if there is any issue, that the safety net for residents is within the province, and especially that around the water table as well. So those are all the positives. The things that have been really, really concerned are the fact that the community does have significant issues with their water table. People have drilled and re-drilled their wells. Some people have shared with me that they've had to take out another mortgage, something that they never thought about in their lifetime right now, that they might have to do that because of the water issue when re-drilling a well. That's a big concern. The concern around that turn, that 90-degree turn, is scary. The fact that the road is built to the 2 driveways is good, but 2 driveways in the potential community of 525 units is a bit of a concern for people. It does sound like there are some answers and there's some protection again with the province and the permitting around the habitats and wildlife and how they're protected. So it does sound like that's there. I think that the faith that the community has to put in permitting, and that's where other issues will get addressed. It's hard because the voice isn't there. Their voice isn't heard when it comes to permitting. That's in the responsibility of the province, and I would guess in some ways talking to our MLAs that are appropriate there. So those are some of the things that I'm thinking, like, what are the pros and what are the cons? And when you look at the infrastructure and the recreation and the schools and the fire and the policing, those are all real issues. And I think that the concern for both the current residents and future residents it's a real thing about, will everything be there? Will it be what we were talking about in terms of complete communities? And I know that doesn't fit within this discussion about it's as of right and it fits. And so sometimes I feel like saying, as a new councillor, could we please write municipal planning strategies and land use bylaws so that we talk about how do we make complete communities more? But right now we have what we have. And so what we have technically says it's okay, but there's a whole piece about thinking about what is the livelihood of everyone that lives there: infrastructure, roads, access, water table. Those are big concerns. And so I would be really interested to hear what my fellow colleagues say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Outfit. We cannot hear you. You're muted. You sound better that way. Sorry, Tim, we still can't hear you. Would you be able to dial into the meeting? Okay. Are there any other councillors who would like to speak? Go ahead, Councillor Lovelace.
Thank you. Hopefully, Tim, you can get your system figured out there. So I just want to say thank you very much to the speakers, to everyone who has written us. And, you know, as council members of community council, it's really important for us to fully understand, you know, your perceptions of impact, and you know how you view this potential development. I also want to thank the applicant for coming forward and giving your presentation, Jennifer. I do appreciate that. I do want to say though that you know, it's really important for everyone here this evening to understand the role of why we're here this evening. We're here this evening for community consultation. Community consultation gives council members the opportunity to hear directly from residents. And those residents are, you know, why we're here. So I'll just use Beaver Brook subdivision as an example. You know, Beaver Brook subdivision used to be woods. And at that time, prior to it being a subdivision, you know, I'm sure that there were probably concerns in the community with the development of this new subdivision. We're seeing that kind of concern with the water table in particular across HRM. And part of the reason for that, and I heard some, you know, confusion as far as who has the legislative authority for, you know, the water table. And I think Councillor Daigle-Gammon pointed out very well: piped water, HRM; well water, the province. And you know, as a resident, I'm sure it's frustrating because you're wondering, you know, where is the province in all this? Through the next step, right? So we're this step here where we work with the applicant to determine what's the best way to ensure that the voices of the residents are heard and the applicant makes those changes if needed within that application. The next step is in permitting. And that permitting process, as Councillor Daigle-Gammon said, call your MLA. If you have concern about the water table, you know, it's important, or concern about the provincial road, it's important for the MLA to hear that, but also keep us in the loop as well, because we're here to support you through that process. But I do want to say that, you know, community consultation helps us make better communities. Yes, at this point, the MPS is not what it could be, but this helps us get to that through our regional plan process and the review that is underway. And as Mr. Vipond has already pointed out, that bylaw is being updated. So I just wanted first and foremost to make sure that everybody on the line understands how grateful we as community council members are to you for being here and voicing your concern. In regards to the wood turtle, again, it's really, really important that we all understand the role of the Department of Environment in the protection of waterways and the protection of species. And certainly HRM will continue, you know, to work with community members and to work with our partners at the province as we go through this regional plan review. Do I have much time left, Mr. Chair? I just wanted to make one more point.
Go ahead.
Thank you. And that is, you know, in thinking about how we move forward as a municipality and how we build complete communities. Part of that is recognizing that it means diversity of housing stock. And it means creating houses or homes or dwellings that permit other, you know, other stock and diversity in that housing, you know, from two-story residential houses to, you know, land lease communities to, you know, multi-unit dwellings. And East Hants in particular is one of those municipalities, as well as HRM, but East Hants is growing significantly, as Ms. Sang had mentioned, you know, with that lands interchange. And I think we'd be probably in a different place had the province not built that, but we're there because we need it. And when my parents moved into East Hanson, the Elmsdale area 30 years ago, Superstore wasn't there. You know, a lot of the amenities weren't there. The pool wasn't there. You know, there was a bowling alley and a pizza joint. So, you know, we are developing complete communities. And while I'm asking you to trust in the process, I'm also asking you to stay connected so that we can work together to build those complete communities. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And yes, I could not agree more with Councillor Lovelace on this. You know, this has been a very difficult process. You know, certainly I have read every email of concern that has come in. I've met with the Home Manufacturers Association to find out how the industry has changed over the years. And, you know, I want to thank everybody who took the time to speak with us here this evening. Your input is important. And you know, I've said this before when it comes to meetings like this and public hearings like this, and when I say this, I don't mean to be callous, but just because you don't get what you want doesn't mean you haven't been heard. And as I said, I don't say that to be callous or flippant, but I think the realization has to be that your voice has been heard, and you know, your voice is all over the changes that have been made to this development since the very beginning. Your voice is all over every pause that we took to make sure that there was no clash with the wood turtle habitat. And you know, I agree completely with Councillor Lovelace that a lot of the concerns that were expressed here tonight are really out of the jurisdiction of HRM councillors and will fall with the Department of the Environment in particular. For those who are concerned about water and your own personal water at your home, the best thing I can suggest is invest in a water test once a year so you have a baseline. So if anything happens, if there are any changes, you got the data to back it up. So I do offer that piece of advice to homeowners on wells who have some concerns. But you know, and I appreciate that this is a difficult decision for Councillor Deagle-Gammon. But the thing is, folks, she is going to be watching this like a hawk. So even though much of the process is out of our hands and rests with the Department of the Environment, I think the community can rest assured that their councillor is going to be following this every step of the way and making sure that your interests are expressed at the provincial level every step of the way. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Outfit, would you like to take another crack at it?
I am back, and if any of you heard me blessing Zoom, my computer, or Viber up, I apologize. Hopefully that was muted. I am back, and thank you. And I did miss most of Councillor Lovelace's comments. I'm sure they were good. I did hear Councillor Blackburn and much of Councillor Deagle-Gammon. This is different, and I mean, I've been involved for many years when we've been doing public hearings on development agreements, and I have concerns about the turtles. I have concerns about traffic. I have concerns about neighboring communities, but my big issue, my big concern continues, and I have no problem with the type of homes and the type of neighborhood, the land lease and the type of homes that we've seen and whatnot. I have no problem with that at all. The one that's still nagging at me is the water issue. And it nags at me because of what I went through on Giles Drive in Bedford after blasting, and of course what we went through in Monarch Rivendell when before Councillor Deagle-Gammon's time, and trying to help those folks. So if Shane's still there, can he take me through once more the water issue. The phasing, I understand, out over 25 years, up to 525 units, if through permitting, when tests and things are done over the period. But first of all, it's hard for me to swallow, and I realize this is a little different, but it's hard for me to swallow that council doesn't have some sort of role when in approving a development agreement, doesn't have some sort of role over the concern over water. Okay, so I'm struggling with that one. And secondly, help me understand a bit, because it's been a long day. The 125, they're almost sort of, as of right now, the 125, and the phasing won't kick in and the water test until after the 125? Or will there still be additional, I know there have to be permits and whatnot, but there's still additional investigations with the 125? And if things start to deteriorate quickly during the construction of the 125, they're 50 or 100 or whatever into that, and they're having water issues like we heard from these people today, are there off-ramps or triggers that would fix the situation or stop it?
Okay, thank you, Councillor, through you, Mr. Chair. So the first question is, what is council's responsibility and what part do they play in the issue of groundwater? And that's a difficult one because it comes up at almost every development, rural development, the issue of whose responsibility it is. I think one of the things that we see, the requirement for evaluation of potable water in the evaluation criteria is so that council can have that confidence that the groundwater has been analyzed, it's been demonstrated through third-party review, and that the engineers agree. The engineers put their stamp and they agree that that condition is met. But the problem past that is that HRM and the municipality do not have the authority under legislation to approve the permits for groundwater withdrawal, even at the individual site level, or as opposed to, say, a public water supply where it's a larger endeavor and a higher level threshold of analysis is required. So we do the best with what we can, and with what we can is council has agreed that they must look at the groundwater in the best form of analysis that is available to them in order to provide assurance that they are making an appropriate decision. Past that, it has to go to a higher level of scrutiny at the province, and that's essentially the relationship. I can't explain it better than that. I would say, and just going back to the second part of your question, that in terms of the 125 units, that is within the scope of the analysis of groundwater on the site. It is a reflection of the capacity that currently exists. And it's probably more than that. But that is all that it is within the context of the development agreement. It still has to be reanalyzed and accepted at the permit level. So we know it's there based on technical study. It has to be further verified through the permitting process, and then it has to be further verified at the provincial level. And that is the case for every single construction permit or occupancy permit of every single unit in that development. Now, they may be done in chunks, right? Collectively, there might be 125, and then they might test for another 125, depending upon their schedule of construction. But each has to pass the test, and it has to pass the scrutiny of the province. And the province, their scrutiny is a higher bar because of the level of development and the level of intensity on the plants.
Okay, and I get that, and thank you. My question, and Shane, this may have been before your time.
I hate to say it. Councillor, you are past 5 minutes.
All right, is there someone else waiting to speak? Or?
I just wanted to give Councillor Lovelace, Daigle Gammon, or Blackburn a chance to come in a second time first.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'll wait. Yep.
Mr. Chair, the only thing I will say is just to reiterate the legislative authority that HRM has in this case. And certainly I think that's been well stated, and the role of the Nova Scotia Utility and Review Board, you know, should this not move forward. And you know, I think it's important for the public to understand, you know, the sort of limited scope that we have from a legislative authority to look at with this case. So I just really wanted to reiterate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. It is 5 to 10. To extend the meeting past 10 o'clock, we need another motion. So can I, in the middle of this, have a motion to extend the meeting past 10 o'clock? Councillor Routh had moved it. I see Councillor Daigle Gammon seconding it. All those in favor of extending the meeting past 10 o'clock, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say nay. Great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Lovelace. Go ahead. I think Councillor Outhet.
Okay, thank you. And I understand Councillor Lovelace's comments and whatnot, and I'm going to, and I agree, but I want to come back to just one. I'm just starting to say this, Shane, when this might be before your time, but I think Carl and Thea are on the call. Is this because it's land lease and because of the principal responsibility for that? How is this different than Monarch Rivendell? When somebody allowed those houses to be built, it exceeded the water table. They would have had their permits. HRM certainly had responsibility because they came to us looking for money to extend water services to it. How is this different than Monarch Rivendell, or is that just simply because it's a land lease community and it has more governance over it by the province? Because this isn't adding up to me that if suddenly these folks run into water problems, there's no liability to HRM.
Let me say a few things on that, and then we'll invite Thea to talk about Monarch Rivendell. But it has nothing to do with it being a land lease community. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, I believe Monarch Rivendell was within the service boundary, within proximity to municipal pipes, and there were some other issues. It was a nuanced situation. I think I won't say a one-off, because unfortunately it may occur again at some point, but it had a special set of circumstances. But that is not the case that we're faced with this particular development. It is if there is some type of a problem with respect to the groundwater, that is something that will have to be dealt with at the provincial level. That's not something that the municipality would own. And there are no municipal pipes within proximity, et cetera. Now, in terms of the Monarch Rivendell issue, Thea, I don't know if you have anything to offer, or Carl?
I believe I can. Mr. Chair, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful.
Thank you, Thea. I'm just having a little struggling with this, so thank you for coming forward.
No problem. Probably just a couple different points that I'll make. One of the things that you're seeing here with this particular application, and as Shane has kind of provided an overview through the meeting, it's through at the provincial level, they will be looking for a water withdrawal permit, because they are actually looking at withdrawing a larger amount of water out of a single location. When you're looking at a subdivision, it's a lot of single small wells that are kind of pinned throughout the subdivision, where you may get in kind of that river of water, you may not. So the science behind those two things are quite different. One being kind of the water withdrawal. It's got a lot more regulations behind it in terms of what the province looks at than just the individual single sites. With regards to Monarch Rivendell, it's fair to say, because if I'm not mistaken, it was in a staff report that I wrote, when we were looking at expansion to Monarch and Rivendell, there was known concerns with respect to water in the area. But then again, those decisions that had to be made were prior to HRM getting involved in looking at hydrogeological studies. It was pre-2006. So under the regional plan, we now have some situations where we actually do take a look at hydrogeological issues to make sure we've looked at it for council to make that determination. You know, have we checked, is there enough water that this can proceed to the province for the more detailed review? So I do recall when we were looking at Monarch and Rivendell, there was some questions. It was known in the community, but there wasn't anything that we had within our own kind of umbrella of review to do that analysis. Today is different. We do look at those things. We do those reviews for council. So you have that information as you're trying to make your decision.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor.
I froze. I apologize there for a second. I thought, did I just say everything and I froze? But it was heard. Okay, thank you.
It sounds like it was. It seemed like a natural conclusion.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Councillor Oathit, does that satisfy your question? Councillor Oathit is frozen as well.
That's what I thought froze, and it was the councillor that froze. Okay.
Yes. Okay. This is unfortunate. Actually, Councillor Daigle-Gammon, there was one question that I heard that I didn't hear that I might not have heard an answer to, and I'm not sure. So, Councillor Blackburn, if you wouldn't mind assuming the chair for just a second. My question to Shane was one that Tim asked that I hate to repeat it. But it was, what happens if we approve this and all of the approvals go ahead and it goes up to 125 units, and then 50 units into development, there is a problem with water. Is there a way to suspend or to stop the development, or would it just happen?
That would be an appeal. Go ahead, Councillor.
No, sorry, I was just going to introduce you, Shane. Go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor. Through you to Councillor, that would be an appeal to the province again. Now the question is, if there's, I think that would be an unlikely circumstance if, because their point of water withdrawal would be only from a few sources. So the question of, that's not to say that it couldn't happen. Nothing is assured, but certainly if there was an issue on site, the province issued the permit, right? We're not issuing the permit. The province is issuing the permit. So if there is insufficient water, then we would appeal to the province. And that isn't a satisfactory answer, but I think that's the reality of it.
All right,
okay.
Shane. Thank you.
Thank you. I just have a message from Councillor Oathit that he has crashed and is requesting a call. I do see him moving, but I don't see him. Or sorry, I don't hear him.
Yeah.
So if Corey is still around. Thank you. I see that Corey has joined us. Corey, Councillor Oathit is having a challenge. If you wouldn't mind giving him a call. In the meantime.
Doing that now.
Would you mind phoning Councillor Oathit just to make sure that he can connect and to confirm any technical issues?
Doing that now. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Daigle-Gammon, I'm going to hand the floor to you to close, please.
Before I close, may I just ask a question of clarification on that very last comment of Shane's? Just when you said we would appeal, who is we? When you say if there's an issue, who is we appeals? Is that HRM? Is that the developer?
Well, that's interesting, but I think it would be the developer and HRM at the permit level. If we've issued a permit in error, or if it's problematic in its implementation and the authority rests with the province, then we would be looking to the province to weigh in and deal with the issue. So if the province is, you're giving me a hypothetical, but if they've issued a water withdrawal permit on the basis of of sufficient water, and that water is not there, then the province would need to answer for that water withdrawal permit issuance. Now, whether that would be in the private hands of the developer or in the case of HRM, who issues their own construction permit, I think the situation would be nuanced depending upon the circumstance. Okay. So I think that it's a possibility that both levels could be looking for answers from the province in that case.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I see Tim is on the phone there, and I don't know if I should close now, Mr. Chair, or do you want to wait for Councillor Oathead, or?
So I had mentioned taking a break after the motion. Would it make sense, and I think it would, if we took a 10 or 15 minute break now, recognizing that when we come back, there will be enough time for you to close and then for the vote. We are going to lose our captioner at 10:30, and I don't know if there is a legislative requirement for us to terminate the meeting at that point.
Mr. Chair, I'm not 100% sure if there is a legislative requirement for us to have the card captioner. Roxanne, do you have an opinion on that?
I am not sure. I was just reaching for the AO to see if there was anything in that, but
the AO doesn't speak to virtual meetings.
It doesn't. Well, the new one with that deals specifically with virtual meetings. Is there nothing in there?
No.
Not
that I'm aware of. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, I would think that we would want to get through this if we could while we have our virtual availability to us. It cuts off at 10:30. Is that what happens? I wasn't aware of that.
We have just had a comment from the captioner that indicates that she can stay if we have a break. So based on that, I'm going to recommend that we take, let's make it 15 minutes right now, and come back at 10:20.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
If everybody's okay with that. All right.
Sure.
Thank you very much. We will see everybody at 10:20. And please don't forget to mute your mics and turn off your cameras.
Yeah. Can you hear me, Andrea?
Yes, we can.
Oh, okay, I'm back. So I'm back. Okay. Thank you very much, Corey. Yeah.
Not sure if you heard, Tim, we are taking a break until 10:20.
Can you hear me, Paul?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sorry. I had two little crashes. I missed Thea's answer, but I judged from hearing Shane's afterwards. I could have got the context of it, I think, his following comments. So.
Okay, thank you. Please don't forget that we are still being broadcast live.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and it is 10:20. So if everybody is back, I believe we can continue. And I see 3 councillors. And there's Councillor Lovelace. That's wonderful. Thank you. So I believe we can continue.
Mr. Chair, before we continue, I just want to confirm with Deputy Mayor Outhit that he was present during the staff presentation and during the public hearing, just to confirm his presence in the meeting, given his Zoom difficulties.
Yeah, the only time I lost was Thea's, when Thea was answering my question about Monarch Rivendell.
Okay, thank you very much, Deputy Mayor Outhit.
Okay. Thank you very much. Are there any further questions about this this application and this motion? And if not, then I will hand the floor to Councillor Daigle-Gammon to close.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Oh, and thank you to everyone, fellow councillors, staff, to the developer, especially to our public that is here tonight for your patience. We are getting long into the night, 10:22, so I appreciate it all. You know, it's clear that this meets the terms of the bylaw and our legislative authority. That part is, painfully clear. I have a sense of my fellow councillors and the position that they have, and I appreciate that. I do think if we were talking about 125 units, that this would not be as big an issue as it is when you're talking about 525. So there is a concern around that. And yes, it's affordable. Yes, affordable housing is absolutely what we need. I completely agree with all of that. And I know that there's no justified technical reason to vote against this at this point in time. And as Councillor Blackburn said, I'll be watching this. Oh, my land. Will I ever be watching this? I'm going to become chummy with the MLA. Let me tell you. But I guess the big worry I have is still around the water. It's still around the transportation. And, I just have this vision of 3 or 4 years down the road and people saying you gave us, and yes, affordable housing, but there's no schools. We've got water problems. There's no recreation. There's no transit. There's no medical. We're concerned around the RCMP presence, that there's all of those things that are still going to be concerns that people are going to have. And my answer, or our answer, is it was a responsibility of the province to address those. And so I'm really still concerned around all of those kinds of things. And so to close, I will say that I still have those concerns. They really haven't changed, although I know that technically it meets the requirements for as of right and our legislative authority. So thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much. I don't see any further speakers, so if someone would like to call for the question.
Question?
Wonderful, thank you. I'm going to do this by hand, and if we need to, we will move to a recorded vote. So all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say nay.
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 The motion carries. Thank you very much, and thank you very much to the members of the public who have put in all of the time letting us know your concerns and your thoughts and all of the information. We really appreciate it, and thanks to staff who have put in an awful lot of work to this. The next item on the agenda is correspondence. Madam Clerk, do we have any correspondence?
Yes, Mr. Chair. The committee did receive correspondence all to item 10.1.1, the public hearing, and all of the correspondence was circulated to the committee before the meeting.
Okay. Thank you very much. And are there any petitions?
Mr. Chair, the clerk's office did not receive a petition for this meeting, but I believe Councillor Daigle-Gammon had circulated a petition regarding 10.1.1 at the December 14th meeting.
Thank you. And there are no presentations. So the next item on the agenda is 13.1.1, case 21355, Berry Hills Development Agreement in Middle Sackville. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would like to move that Northwest Community Council give notice of motion to consider the proposed development agreement as set out in Attachment A of the staff report dated March 4th, 2021, to enable a 167-unit residential subdivision between Lively Road and Wilson Lake Drive in Middle Sackville, and schedule a public hearing. I so move.
Seconded, Lovelace.
Thank you very much. Are there any speakers to the motion? Is this a motion or is this a notice of motion?
First reading.
Yes, Mr. Chair, it's first reading.
Okay, thank you.
It is first reading, and if I can put a little context around this, Mr. Chair, this is sort of the next phase of the Berry Hills subdivision that the community is aware of, but still looking forward to the public hearing phase. Thank you.
Thank you. And seeing no further speakers, all those in favor of the motion signify by, I'm sorry, we had Councillor Blackburn move it. I can't remember who seconded it. Forgive me.
Lovelace.
Councillor Lovelace seconded it. Wonderful. Thank you. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed say nay. Great. Thank you very much. The next is 13.1.2, case 23111, land use bylaw amendment of MU1 mixed use zone, Lucasville. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. I move that Northwest Community Council give first reading to consider approval of the proposed amendment to the land use bylaw for Beaver Bank, Hammonds Plains, and Upper Sackville, as set out in Attachment A of the staff report dated February 17, 2021, and to add a school bus yard to the list of permitted uses in the MU1 mixed use zone, and schedule a public hearing. I so move.
Seconded, Lovelace.
Thank you very much. Are there any speakers to the motion?
I do have a quick question, Mr. Chair.
Councillor Lovelace.
Thank you. Councillor Blackburn, when I drive by this every single day, and this school bus yard has always been there. So I'm just trying to get a sense of why now.
My understanding, thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the councillor. My understanding is that you are correct. There has been school buses parked there since the dawn of time. And apparently there was a complaint that was bylaws complaint that was made, totally separate issue. But when the compliance officer did the investigation, realized that school buses were being parked there. The landowner had no idea that that was not a permitted use. They thought under the mixed use zone that was something that was absolutely permitted. So this is a bit of housekeeping to catch up with the current use of the land, and again going through the public hearing process so we can make sure the community is on board.
Thank you.
That's the exact same scenario we heard at PAC. So yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any further speakers to the motion?
Question.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed say nay. Wonderful. The motion carries. 13.2 is members of Northwest Community Council. There is nothing there. 14 is motions. There is nothing there. We have no items in camera. So we have an added item. Councillor Lovelace.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that Northwest Community Council request a staff report to consider amending the Beaver Bank, Hammonds Plains, and Upper Sackville land use bylaw under MU1 zoning to allow for additional uses for children beyond daycare and education. The report should also consider creation of a new category or categories within MU1 zoning to allow for businesses supporting children's developmental activities. I so move.
So second.
Seconded by Councillor Outfit. Go ahead, Councillor Lovelace.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Outfit, for seconding this. We've had an incredible amount of growth in the Hammonds Plains area, and part of that growth, of course, brings young children. The commercial recreation category within the MU1 does not consider anything beyond daycare or education. And so the lengthy development agreement process, of course, it just limits our opportunities to have these businesses open and serve this very underserved market, this underserved community of children. And in looking at some of the other land use bylaws, including Halifax Mainland bylaw, there's lots of categories, including dance studios. I just really would like us to consider more opportunities and categories within the MU1 zone, in a very busy and growing community of Hammonds Plains. So I appreciate your support with this to move this staff report forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions on the motion?
Question.
Not seeing any. Okay, thank you. Question has been called. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed say nay. Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Paul.
You're welcome. The next item on the list on the agenda is notices of motion. And not seeing any notices of motion, the date of the next meeting is April 4th, 2021. 2 days from now, where we are having a joint Halifax and West Community Council and Northwest Community Council special joint meeting. And then the next Northwest Community Council is on May 10th of 2021. And so the next item on the agenda is adjournment. So could I have someone move to adjourn, please? I see Councillor Outfit has moved to adjourn.